We are back for episode 42 of the Auld Triangle podcast, where we're going to bring you all the latest and greatest news in mixed martial arts from Ireland, from outside Ireland, from all over the mixed martial arts world. We're well spread out, and the band is back together, lads. Sensei Stevenson is back from his trip to Tokyo. He joins us as always at Caoilte de Barra, helping us out today to get through all the news. Lads, how are you keeping, Andy? You're keeping well? You had a good trip?
What's the crack? Great trip. I'm just back from fighting and rising. It was brilliant. Got the win, and I have a very clean arse. Thanks for discussing that in the last podcast. Much appreciated. And delighted to be back. We're back.
Probably possibly the cleanest arse that was walking around Tokyo, now Dublin, maybe even Ireland. The cleanliness.
We live in squalor. We live in squalor in these parts of the world, lads. Like that, the toilets over there, they'll warm your arse, they clean your arse, they give it a little tickle, and then they'll tuck you into bed at night and park your car while you're at it if you press the right button. So, you know, what more can you ask for?
They're well ahead of the game. You don't get that down in your neck of the woods, Caoilte, I bet.
No, not in Limerick. We're not like South County Dublin up there now. So,
still using the sandpaper down there.
Whatever you hold on.
Yeah, exactly. A dock leaf. That's what you want.
You wouldn't get this in any other MMA podcast,
no,
would you?
What a start. Completely derailed from the very start. But let's get into it. We've got lots to discuss today. Obviously, you would have seen big interviews coming in ahead of Cage Warriors Dublin. Graham Boylan joins us to discuss that card and lots of other things as well. Plus, we've also got Solomon Simon and Paddy McCorry who will join us to discuss their fights on the Cage Warriors card. We'll discuss that card in a little bit. Before we do that, guys, let's take a look back, because there's been plenty of action in Irish mixed martial arts, and we've got to stop at Leah McCourt first. Fresh in our memory, Bellator 300 just happened this past weekend, and an absolutely phenomenal performance from Leah McCourt. Career best performance, in my opinion. A tough matchup against Sarah McMahon. Difficult stylistic matchup for Leah, but she passed with flying colours. You know, she had a little bit of adversity, but used her counter wrestling and judo and jiu-jitsu very well, got on top and landed monster elbows en route to a victory. We were lucky enough to speak with her ahead of that fight. Obviously, that was on the last episode of the Auld Triangle. So, you know, a lot of talking points coming out of this, including, you know, the potential next fight for Leah. But let's talk about the fight itself first, lads. I'll go over to you, Andy, first. You know, I think we're all in a kind of a similar thought process into the level of performance that Leah produced at Bellator 300. Such a big occasion, such a big fight, you know, with title implications and everything like that. She just went out and absolutely passed it with flying colours, Andy.
She looked brilliant. I couldn't agree more that it was a career best performance. Like, we were kind of chatting privately in the lead up to talk. I was just commenting. I thought she looked in incredible shape heading into this from a strength and conditioning perspective. Like, I don't think I've ever seen her as shredded. And one of the things that I was kind of not concerned about, but I was like, this is going to be interesting, is to see how she deals with McMahon's physicality. And she passed that with flying colours. I thought she defended the takedowns brilliantly. She landed a couple of judo throws. Obviously had to deal with some adversity where she had her back taken and there was, you know, McMahon searching for a choke. But really, like, I don't think I've ever seen such ferocity from Leah McCourt when she got to that dominant position to start raining down those elbows and those punches. It was a perfect performance from her, in my opinion. Look, of course she had to deal with some adversity, but you're fighting against a former Olympian. I thought she was phenomenal. And you know, I heard her speaking with you guys in the last episode about maybe things not always clicking for her when she's in the cage. And it seemed like everything just clicked, and she was, you know, she stayed composed. And then as soon as she had the opportunity to go on the offensive, she took it with both hands, and fair play to her. And what a win, and what a fight it sets up.
Brilliant. Yeah, like what you mentioned there, Andy, is exactly what it is. It was like, you know, this performance was kind of bubbling up for Leah McCourt for quite some time, and, you know, it happened and everything did click. And at the highest level, like you mentioned as well, and I'll send it over to you, Caoilte, you know, you're going to kind of face a little bit of adversity, but it's how you face that adversity. And Leah faced it head on and got the job done. Look at Caoilte, we spoke about it, like Andy said, on the group, and we felt, you know, we knew it was a difficult matchup for her, but we were talking about, you know, counter wrestling Sarah McMahon, who was obviously going to come in and close the distance with her judo, with her jiu-jitsu, but also punishing those entries. And she kind of ticked off all of those boxes, as well as where you're not getting an easy takedown, you're going to take damage. And ultimately, she ended up on top position, landing elbows, and the fight was called to a halt inside of round one. It was just a fantastic performance, Caoilte.
Absolutely, it was incredible the way she defended the takedowns and managed to get out of the adversity that she faced and just take that on. And then utilize her judo that we seen before, but so effectively in this case to actually set up the kind of sequence where she's able to get to a position where she could land those elbows, where she just rained them down. They were with dangerous intent. You knew she wanted to finish as soon as she started landing that first elbow, and it was clinical, career best performance, as we've all said, and it just sets up such an amazing opportunity for her now, which she teased with us in the last podcast as well.
Yeah, she absolutely did. It's on to the next one as well, and the next one is Cyborg Santos. It will be for the featherweight title, wherever it may take place. Obviously, Leah did tell us on the last episode of the Auld Triangle that Bellator had promised her a trip to Belfast for that title shot, and what an occasion that would be. But yeah, it's great. And I mean, a win like this, Andy, really sets up, look at another difficult fight against Cyborg. But, you know, the way Leah was speaking with us, it seems like, you know, she sometimes struggles to believe in herself a little bit or believe in her skill set. But you know what? Going out there and getting a win like she did last night against Sarah McMahon instills that belief. And she's got to build upon that, and she's got to bring it into the Cyborg fight. But it'd be crazy if it did happen in Belfast. But, you know, if it just happens in general, I think she deserves it now at this stage. She's been building towards it for many a year. But obviously, Andy, with the uncertainty surrounding Bellator right now, we can't say with great confidence that event will happen, but we can only hope that they give Leah that opportunity in Belfast against one of the pioneers of women's mixed martial arts.
Yeah, and like, look, it's a weird thing right now, because you have to kind of speak out of both sides of your mouth almost when it comes to this situation. Like, as you guys will hear later on in the interview with Graham Boylan, that I'm kind of speaking from the perspective of this is probably going to be not around anymore, this Bellator Europe thing, but hopefully it is. Hopefully Bellator continues. And Leah McCourt, Jesus, like she's more than earned it. Like, to go out there, not even just this one, like she'll gain confidence from the McMahon one, but I'm sure she gained a heap of confidence from the Zingano fight too, which is a very contentious decision. So I would love to see them come to Belfast. Cyborg has teased a number of times that she would be open to coming to Ireland to fight. I think it would make a lot of sense. It would be a big occasion. And yeah, like what more can you ask for? So hopefully that happens. I hope Bellator doesn't go away. I hope fighters continue to fight under that banner and get those opportunities. But at the same time, we don't know. Like, it doesn't seem that that's what's going to happen, but hopefully it does.
Yeah, absolutely. Credit to Leah, fantastic win. We're really looking forward to seeing that title fight wherever it does happen. But we shall move on. Obviously, we've got other fights to talk about. We could talk about that. We've got such a jam-packed show today, guys. We've got to get through everything fairly snappy as well. But we'll move over to PFL Europe, where we had a trio of Irish fighters fighting on the PFL Paris card. A fantastic event. Caoilte, I'm going to send it over to you first. We'll discuss John Mitchell's win over Ghasim Darouche, a rematch from the quarterfinals of the lightweight bracket in PFL Europe. Went in there, and it was like, for me, I was just thinking to myself, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And exactly what happened here with John Mitchell. Took the fight down and dominated throughout 3 rounds. What did you think of that performance, Caoilte? Difficult for John to come in against a guy who he has just beaten, because you can imagine Darouche was, you know, for lack of a better word, fantasizing about getting back in there with John to correct those wrongs. And you're coming in there against a highly motivated guy. And Darouche came out swinging. He didn't make it easy early days for John.
You're right. And it was a bit of a weird situation with obviously having to compete against a guy that you've just beaten and then potentially lose a spot in a final that has 100 grand on the line. It's mad. So fair play to John. He obviously probably no choice in the matter to step up, but as you said, just broke, don't fix it. And Darouche had a point to prove after that last time being dominated by John Mitchell, especially on the ground. And then look, it was very much a very similar fight to the previous time where John just took him down and dominated. Didn't really allow Darouche to even get much off. And John actually looked, I think, even better in this one than he did in the last one as well. So very dominant performance overall, and really lined up a massive opportunity there for Dublin.
Yeah, 100%. And look at Andy, not easy to come in there again on a couple of days' notice. You know, a couple of other Irish fighters have had to deal with that in the quarterfinal stages, and John had to deal with that this time, but handled everything with flying colours. horse box, the Cork horse box. He got the job done, corrected Sean O'Connell, corrected us as well, I think, on last time when he was speaking with us on the nickname. But ticking off all the boxes here and heading on to the final in Dublin.
A great win for John, not the Ripper Mitchell. I thought that as you mentioned, Dariush came out swinging. I thought he brought a lot more to the fight than he did last time, and I don't know if this was as dominant a win for John as the first one. However, I think it was a better performance and a better win than his first one. I thought he landed a lot more strikes. He when he got to the when he was dominating Dariush on the ground, I thought that he was then firing off his strikes and as well. So what more can you do? Two dominant wins en route to a final, and he hasn't had to really showcase, as he's talked about with you guys and elsewhere. He hasn't had to showcase his striking, which is really his bread and butter. I know people talk and you'll hear from Paddy McCorry in a bit. He'll wax lyrical about John Mitchell's wrestling too, but he's a fantastic striker as well. So it's not just he's no grappler only.
Yeah, and he doesn't have the weapons of the elbows off the ground too, which he spoke to us about on the last episode. And I mean, as soon as he gets into fights where I hope PFL change that rule. I understand it on a tournament format, but let's fucking bring these fights in. And
allow him for the final.
Yeah, allow him for the final. I understand, look at with cuts and everything like that, but let's talk about the other semi-final. Obviously, didn't go Dylan Tuke's way. He was in there taking on Jakub Kazuba. We were looking from the outside in, maybe with the hopes of an All-Ireland final coming in December. It was not to be for Dylan Tuke and in that fight. And, thinking back and looking at this fight again with Dylan, I just, in certain terms, put it down to a little bit of a size and a little bit of a strength difference from Dylan coming in here, where he did very well in round one, but was just unable to kind of maintain that pressure and maintain kind of winning the grappling exchanges against a pretty good fighter in Kazuba as well. Dylan fought many years at featherweight, was kind of growing and building up and looked in fantastic shape, looked in as good a shape as I have ever seen him going into this fight. But ultimately, the grind of the fight kind of got on top of him eventually, and Jakub Kazuba was able to kind of take advantage of some of those grappling exchanges, opened up a cut on Dylan as well. And, wasn't Dylan's night, but he'll be back, and I'm sure he'll be on the Dublin show as well. Your thoughts on the fight, please?
Yeah, I thought he looked great in round one. I thought he probably took the first round. I was surprised to see 30-27 on there, but I thought he won round one and he lost rounds 2 and 3. And maybe it was a bit of a size, and he definitely seemed to slow down in the third considerably. And Kazuba took over. I think once the turning point in the fight for me was really when Kazuba landed those knees. It was in the clinch, I think, or up against the cage, and he cut Dylan. From there, the momentum started to shift, and it was still a nip and tuck fight. But then in the third, he kind of took over. I don't know, with Dylan, I know he was saying after that it's not his weight class, and then he went back on that, I think, and I think he's going to stick around at 155. I think it's easy to forget. He was inactive for a long time, so he's come back, and I thought he's looked brilliant since he's returned to MMA. So it's a loss here, but I think his last number of fights have been a really solid, baseline for him to now build on. Let's say if he was to go into the next season or whatever, we don't know what's in store for Dylan, but I'm sure we'll see him in Dublin anyway. I'm excited to see him compete, and I just hope he stays active and continues to. So whether that's at 145, 155, he's a big guy. I don't think he's undersized at 155.
I think 155 would be fit. Look, obviously his thought process after the fight, he'd be all over the place and stuff like that. He didn't look bad. Skills for skills. It's just that, his second fight, after you said, Andy, he was away for quite some time, and then he's coming back and fighting up a weight class to what he was used to in previous fights. So this is his second fight at lightweight, so it's going to take time for his body to adjust and for him to kind of get in. Look, you can feel a certain way in the gym, but you might get in and actually fight on the night and feel a different way as well. So those are all lessons that you take back. But I mean, PFL would be absolutely foolish if they didn't stick him on this Dublin card still. With me ahead of the fight, wanting to go there and fight in front of all of his friends and his family. And I think PFL, I'm sure, will give him the opportunity to do that as well. I'll move over to Caoilte just for Franz Mlambo versus Mokhtar Benkaki. another late notice opponent change here as well. And look, this is not ideal, and look, it's kind of out of PFL's control, but you want to try and get these going as smooth as possible. But this has been the second late notice change for Franz Mlambo heading into a fight. He did it in the quarterfinals. He's done it again in the semi-finals, but he was successful. He got the decision. What did you think of his performance, Caoilte?
I did really well. It wasn't easy by any means whatsoever, but it's a case of where he probably went into this preparing for a completely different opponent to what he got. He got this guy who was a lot shorter than him and wanted to get in the inside, put the pressure on Franz and get up against the cage. I feel like Franz actually really managed his distance quite well at times. Maybe in the first round, just a little bit, he was up against the cage, but still landing almost sniper-like. Striking was on point as always. Thought he looked quite smooth in that. His opponent, I can't say his name for the life of me. He did off Benkaki. He offered a lot in the clinch. I feel he was good in the clinch when he got into the pockets. But Franz really well at managing the game plan. And as of round 2 and 3, I feel like he managed to keep away from the cage a lot more and pick off his shots a bit. And yeah, it was a tough fight by all means. But I do feel like he won that fairly clear. I was surprised when I did hear a split decision being called out for that one. Benkaki, he was completely surprised by it. He thought he was after winning. Completely fair enough. It was a close fight, but I do feel like Franz did enough. One thing actually, this fight, it did annoy me. I'm not sure if you guys got this, but the stats at the below of the screen, they're so annoying. And they even say it after. Like, they said afterwards that they don't tell the full story of the fight. It's like, what?
They definitely, yeah, it's like, they don't tell. Why are we showing them? They do that as well on the global kind of PFL shows as well. And look, UFC are guilty for it too. Stats mean nothing. I hate stats on the screen when we're watching a fight because it kind of can stray your opinion a little bit. Andy, just talking about Franz's performance itself, went in there. Looked a little bit looked more comfortable than he did in the quarterfinal fight, but almost looked a little bit too comfortable at times in there. And I felt that he found himself past the threshold with his back against the cage a little bit more than he would have wanted to. Whereas I feel he was doing his best work when he had that space in the middle of the cage, landing these strikes. And, he was having a good time. He was dancing in between rounds. I was curious to pick his brain to see if he was having almost too much of a good time in there. What was your kind of opinion on the fight?
Yeah, he's so much fun to watch because his movement is so fluid, whether it's his defensive movement striking or when he's throwing, and yeah, when from a spectator's point of view, it's beautiful MMA to watch. When he's on and when he's landing, it looks like poetry in motion. However, it does open yourself up when your hands are down and you're swaying and. Look, Benkasi landed, or Benkaki, however you say his name, he landed some hard shots.
I probably got it wrong. It's Benkaki or Benkasi, whatever. We call him both names and we can't
Mokhtar. He cracked him. He cracked Franz with a monster right hand in the first, and he did. He landed a lot throughout the fight. I thought Franz edged it 2-1, but I thought it was a close enough fight. I think probably the second round was the clearest one for Franz. But look, I will watch Franz Mlambo fight any day of the week, and he's in the final. And I think I would be, he's got a tough fight in his hands in Khurshid Kakarov, a guy who used to train at SBG, but I would be fancying Franz here to go in and do the job and come away with the 100,000.
Absolutely, as would I kind of fancy. Look, John will have a tough fight against Jakub Kazuba as well, and it's fantastic, and it's worked out for PFL that we have some Irish in the finals for Dublin. I mean, I would imagine that's what they would have been hoping for when they put all of this together. So credit to them as well. We moved from Bellator to the PFL. Now we move to Cage Warriors, and we'll stop off first at Cage Warriors 160 in Manchester, where we had Team KF's Adam Shelley going in there and taking on Matthew Calamari, and a really, really great performance in my opinion. And I think, we're talking about career best performances. I think this was Adam Shelley's career best performance because he came in there against Calamari, Caoilte, and Calamari was trying to kind of counter wrestle him and push him forward, and obviously didn't want to strike with a guy of Adam Shelley's kind of caliber on the feet. But I think Adam Shelley did excellently well in defensive work against the cage. Obviously he got taken down but sprung back up, landed elbows, absolutely battered him from pillar to post on the feet, and won a unanimous decision rather comfortably on the cards. I know two cards, I think, were 30-26 or 30-25 or something. I
think it was two 30-27s and a 30-25, yeah.
Yeah, 30-25. I mean, I don't know. It's whatever. It was a comfortable win, and one judge obviously saw it that way as well, and I won't argue too much about it, but I thought it was a 30-27 myself in my own card. But would you agree? I think this was a difficult fight against an experienced guy who wanted to go in there and wrestle against Adam Shelley's game, and Adam Shelley did excellently well to kind of defend him, fend him off, and land damage too, because we're talking about modern day judging where you cannot just defend takedowns or go for takedowns. You need to land damage, and that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, it seemed like Camilleri was kind of sacrificing the opportunity to land damage in a kind of too advanced position and try and get a submission, and was really kind of costing himself in that situation. But on the other hand, Adam Shelley took advantage of this and started landing those shots from the bottom and was scoring, even though he was on bottom for quite a lot that first round and on the back foot in the wrestling department more so. But the damage from the bottom was kind of the story of the fight for some parts. And then when it got to the feet, Adam Shelley once again, like really, really so sharp in terms of the striking. And it was levels above Camilleri in these moments. But overall, I thought he did really well. It was actually the moments where it wasn't the mat reminded me of that. The Shelley and the Elliott fight where there was damage being landed on bottom of, for the naked eye, they might not realise what the judging criteria really is. But yeah, career best performance overall. I think his grappling looked good, defensive grappling. He even got a takedown at one point as well. And then we saw the clinical striking, as we all know he has. So yeah, brilliant performance, and may set up quite a good fight that I think we were speaking about off camera as well with Adam Cullen.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring to you, Andy. Adam Cullen picked up a very good win on the night in Manchester as well. That's a fight I'd love to see. I'm sure that's a fight you'd love to see as well.
Yeah, I mean, they speculated on the broadcast. Brad Wharton was saying, that could be one. Both of them have expressed their interest. Adam Shelley has called for it online. Adam Cullen, he said, I think he commented on it and sent me a message being like, yeah, I'm game for this. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Battle of the Adams. But yeah, really, really solid performance from Shelley. And it wasn't too long. It was only 18 or not even 18 months ago. He's coming off that loss to James Power. That was a tough loss. He's won 3 on the bounce since then. He looked phenomenal in Dublin earlier this year, landing highlight reel techniques and getting the finish in that one. And now another fairly dominant performance, obviously. And it showed. I think that performance showed kind of the way that KF and Chris Fields approach how they coach when it comes to scoring in MMA, because Camilleri got a lot of takedowns, but he did kind of nothing from them, and Shelley was immediately smashing elbows in. So that's how you win MMA fights.
You know what? It shows growth as well, Andy, because we had obviously Ryan Shelley and Matthew Elliott and the controversy surrounding that fight as well. And there was no question about Adam Shelley's performance and winning and landing clear damage in defensive takedown, and obviously when the fight was separated too. So fantastic win for him. And look, you got to speak with him. Obviously that interview would probably be up on SevereMMA.com. Obviously we're recording, you'd just done it yesterday. I've not got the chance to see it myself. It's probably out, people would have seen it now, but what were some of the insights you got from Adam based off that interview?
Yeah, really, he's just looking to go full steam ahead here now. Like he sees himself up at the championship level and getting to a UFC level over the course of the next short while. So he's ready. He wants to go back again in Newcastle. He's called for the Cullen fight. Obviously, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, because I don't know if it'll require someone to pull out or if that card is full. But he seems to want to get out again before the end of the year and then springboard on from there. So yeah, full steam ahead for Adam Shelley.
Perfect. As I said, head over to SevereMMA YouTube. You'll catch that interview, obviously, on SevereMMA.com as well. And a lot of interviews. We'll be talking to a lot of guys. And Andy has been talking to a lot of the fighters on this card as well. Head on over there to check all of those out. Let's move forward to Cage Warriors 161. And that's happening this Saturday at the RDS. And before we come in and share our thoughts on it, let's go over to the Cage Warriors President Graham Boylan, and we'll pick his brain about the fight, putting this card together, the future of Cage Warriors, and a bunch of other stuff as well. And a brilliant interview. We're delighted to get to talk to Graham. I'm going to send it over to myself for that. And I would like to welcome for the very first time to the Auld Triangle podcast, Cage Warriors President Graham Boylan. Graham, thanks a million for taking some time to speak with us today.
Thank you for having me, gentlemen. Look forward to kind of mischief you're going to get me into.
There'll be a bit of mischief, but not from the very start. Anyway, I want to say this week you just celebrated 13 years as a promotion, and you as the president of Cage Warriors as well. And I want to say congratulations for that. It's a fantastic feat, and not an easy feat in mixed martial arts either in this cutthroat business. You've done quite well to deliver a quality product, deliver quality fighters through that 13-year tenure, and you're still doing it to this day. So how has it been for 13 years?
It's been, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for the world. It's been a crazy ride. It's 13 years at Cage Warriors, probably 16 years in the game. But as a lot of people will know, we took Cage Warriors on. There was nothing there 13 years ago. It was an organization we took on that was established in 2002, but it was in a lull, doing nothing when we took it on. So it's been a crazy 13-year build, and there's 2 or 3 of us that are still there from that day when I took over back in 2010. And yeah, it's been a crazy ride, crazy stories, crazy people, crazy friendships, ups and downs, fights, you name it. It's been something that I wouldn't change a day of. But doing that while working a job is another thing. So it's what started off as a job came back as a hobby, and running many different businesses, including Cage Warriors, is a handful.
When you kind of kicked everything off, Graham, could you imagine that you'd be in the position that you're in right now, 13 years later?
There wasn't any where we wanted to get to 13 years ago. It was a case of concentrate on the now, and whatever comes of it. So we concentrated on what we had, what we needed to do. And I've always had the mentality within business and within business structure and building businesses is if you concentrate what we have to do, everything else will fall into line based on what we do to make the end goal happen. And our end goal was to build a solid, reputable organization that was a genuine developmental path for athletes who, at the time, was a wild, wild west. Was a back in 2010 was a situation where shows happen without medical pre-fight medical. Shows happen without ambulances and doctors at shows. Shows happen with no blood tests. There was just nothing. So our aim was to build a reputable developmental platform that taught the guys from the get-go what would be required of them when they turn pro, and to get them used to what a professional athlete would be from the get-go and get them safe. That was the goal. That was the goal, and that was the end goal in 2013. So I believe we've stuck to our word over 13 years, and we've delivered that. Where it is and the position it holds, that's the industry's talk. But internally, we've achieved everything that we've set out to do, and we're still riding that wave.
Absolutely. You've done such a fantastic job, because it's not easy to stay above ground in this industry. And look, you've held many and many of Irish shows through that 13 years, many great moments. And the next one is this coming Saturday in the RDS, Cage Warriors 161. Big excitement coming into this card. Couple of prospects coming through, and I kind of describe this card as a little bit of a transition of Irish talent, obviously with Paul Hughes at the top of the card. It's in the RDS venue. What I always liked about Cage Warriors was the intimacy of the shows in venues like the RDS. Obviously, you've come off successful shows at the 3 Arena and also at the Belfast Odyssey Arena too. We're back in the RDS. Was it something like wanting to recreate that intimacy where we've seen the likes of Conor jumping into the crowd in the past? We've seen Reese and Caolan Loughran. We've seen Paul Hughes and Morgan Charrier create a crazy atmosphere in venues at Cage Warriors shows. And obviously maybe kind of helps with maybe ticket sales as well. Obviously, you didn't play out to a full 3 arena. You sectioned that off. Very successful show. But I believe maybe the RDS show will create that intimacy again that you've done so many times in the past.
Yeah, there are 2 things to address, Harry. And one is, I think it was 3 years ago, I made a public statement that we were going to step back into the island and start rebuilding the scene. Where we were going to get guys back to the UFC, because guys were fighting around the world. They were fighting in organizations where they were getting paid, but they weren't getting the UFC credit that a UFC accolade holds within the sport. And we watched everything happen from afar, where we were doing shows everywhere but the island. So we made that commitment to step back in and start developing the talent, which we did. Now, a talent developmental cycle is 2.5 years. From when you pick a guy up, that's maybe 1-2 fights into his career, you're looking at 2.5 years by the time that athlete gets to a point where you're now looking at a UFC contract. You're now 7, 8, 9, 10-0. You're looking at our 10-1, whatever it is you've got. You're now there. You're looking at that. You're looking at that contract that you've set out to get from the moment you started training. When that time comes where the guys that we've stepped in 3 years ago and marked, we put a mark on their name, just like you put a laser sight, you put a red dot on someone, that's the person we're developing. We're getting that person to the UFC. So we picked maybe 7 or 8 names on the island 3 years ago. Half of them are in the UFC now. That's what we did. That's what we committed to. And we got the right fights, the right opponents at the right time in their career, at the right level at what they were at, got them tested, moved them up, got them tested, moved them up. And we're now looking at a turnover where we've got guys back in the UFC, which we didn't have 3 years ago. There was nobody there. Now it's there. Now it's happening. And I'm confident the UFC is going to come back to the island next year because of what's there. So to come back to that's the first part, answer to your question. To finish the answer to the question, when they start signing, now you kind of deflate the bubble a little bit, and the interest is now back on the guys underneath them who we got to develop. You can't fill a 3 arena with guys that we're going to develop. We got to build 100%. A story around them. We got to put the narrative around them. We've now got to start putting the right fights for them, start stepping them up, start testing them, start pushing them to a point where the island's going fucking nuts for them now because they've watched the last 7 of their fights. Now they're on the verge of the UFC. So for us, it goes in that cycle. And if you look at that cycle, everywhere we go, you'll see that cycle. It's not rocket science. It's crystal clear in front of you. Look at the cities we go to. Look at the countries we do. Look at the guys we've developed. Go back and look for 2-year cycles. That's what we've done. We've big arena, boom, sold out 2-3 times. Guy goes to the UFC. 3 guys go to the UFC. We'll step back. We're not stupid. We know we're not going to fill an arena with 10,000 people with guys who are 5, 6, 7 and all. There needs to be hype behind these guys. And we build that hype over that cycle. And when that cycle comes to the end and they go on and to greater things, we start the cycle again. That's the role.
100%.
So that's why we're
transition.
The RDS now. Yeah, it's a transition period. We're on the RDS now, so we're going to turn that wave around again. And it's a historic event. The RDS has never had MMA, to my knowledge. So to be able to make that happen, that's another tick in the box for the sport. It's another tick in the box for the reputation of the sport on the island. It's another positive step forward in building the sport, opening the doors to a venue that's never had MMA before, and to allow us in. And they're allowing us in because of the professional way the show is run. So,
Graham, whereabouts in the RDS? Because as you said, it's a first for the RDS to have one. Is it in the Simmons Court area, or where is it in the RDS?
I believe so. Yes, yeah. We've got we're using the Simmons Court, I believe, and then we slowly step up as the cycle gets bigger. Yeah.
Do you know what the capacity of that is? I assume.
I think I think we've set it up for about 2.5, and I think we're already above 2. So I think it's going to be a nice crowd in there. Okay.
Looking at the last event, I thought it was quite successful. I thought when you look at the fact that Oban went to Contender Series, obviously Morgan got signed and Reese got signed off the back of it. It's a success, as you mentioned. It kind of the fighter signing it presents you with new challenges. When you have Reese gone, and then also Caolan Loughran, who he's a guy who went a lot quicker than 2.5 years to the UFC. When you're looking at this show, we have Paul Hughes back, who many thought was going to be gone to the UFC as well, but it was kind of a relatively late notice main event put together. What were you expecting to be the main event for this Irish show to begin with? Were you expecting Paul, or what were you thinking originally?
There was talks with Paul, but the whole situation was just like Paul didn't want to defend his belt. He wanted the lightweight belt. The lightweight belt holder was fighting Dana White's Contender Series. The whole timeline of that was just all factual on our side, but just very mixed up on what the expectancies were versus what the reality is. And, you know, I would love to see a double division world champion. You know, we would have loved to have done that. But the reality of that is the lightweight world champion had just had a fight in Dana White's Contender Series, and we've got a featherweight world champion calling him out while he's still in camp to fight on the Dana White's Contender Series. He doesn't get the nod in Dana White's Contender Series. He gets beaten. He still has the belt. He's got time to defend it. And now we're in a situation where there's weeks gone by where you've mentioned you want to fight, you've not kind of confirmed. Then there's a situation where, you know, we don't want to fight for the featherweight belt anymore. Now we want the lightweight belt. The lightweight belt is a little bit tied up at the moment because the champion just fought. So we've come back to, here's a number one contender spot, you know. Jans is the number one contender in that division. Go fight each other, and you can have the champion when he's ready. And that's where this was kind of laying down the whole time. But the delay in all this was, we have a champion who's contracted to fight in the UFC on Dana White's Contender Series. You can't make any decisions while that's happening. And then the belt wasn't available because we still have a champion after he fought. So there was a lot of misconceptions and a lot of back and forth in the timeline on that. And it took a little bit longer to get that main event done and get it announced. And if I hadn't been Paul, it would have been Mason. Mason Jones would have main evented that card. So you've got a former UFC athlete who's an absolute finisher fighting Jan Lassie. That's as good a main event as ever. May not be an Ireland favorite, but in terms of main event for TV broadcast, couldn't get any better.
Was there a consideration ever to make this an interim title between Paul and Jan Cahiggins?
Not possible, because, and this is where assumptions are the motherfucker of all things, right? Because people assume so much, and it's the assumptions and the lack of knowledge is what creates all the crap. When a Cage Warriors champion fights, it's in his contract or her contract. It's standard. You have 3 months to tell us when you want to defend the belt. Okay? You have 3 months. Now, Paul had exactly the same thing when he won the belt. After that 3 months, if you tell us that you're not ready to defend the belt, that's when the interim belt happens. And only then. Because it's disrespectful. If somebody just fights and somebody else wants to fight for the belt and we have a date and it's like, oh, well, you've just had a fight, but if you don't agree to fight this guy now in 2 weeks' time or in a month's time, then, you know, we're going to do an interim belt and fuck you. You got to show respect to the guys that have the belts. And we've shown respect to every person that's got a Cage Warriors belt. You have 3 months to tell us from the day you won that belt when you want to defend it. And those 3 months comes up, we contact you. Do you want to defend your belt on this date? No, I'm injured. No, I'm not ready. No, I want more time. Fine. Interim belt happens. But until that timeline is up, there is no interim belt. Otherwise, the whole fucking division could have interim belts. And then what's the point in doing them?
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to see when. I mean, it sounds like it's literally not possible, or contractually perhaps. But yeah, I'd love to see it just from a promotional tool, a marketing perspective. But no, it's only a minor detail. But the fight, Hughes versus Hardwick, is that a fight that you would like to put on? You know, if Paul gets through Cahiggins here, and once George is back and ready, is that one you'd like to put on, or would you rather?
This is a number one contender spot.
Okay.
This is a number one contender spot. It's pitches to both guys know this. Both guys know, you know, the winner of this it's a belt tie. It's a belt shot. So, and then this is a crazy thing. Like I would love nothing more than to be with you guys. Because now I can run all the fantasy shit I want. Now I can run all the fantasy shit I want. You know, I can sit on the other side of the table and I can have all the fantasy conversations and I can cause absolute fucking havoc with what my opinion is, and I can do whatever the fuck I want. But I'm not.
You can call it the L Square if you want, Graham. You
can come on with us if you want.
Yeah. But I'm in a situation where I've got to keep 200 athletes happy, and we've got to keep systems in place. We've got to keep certain black and whites that are just like, we can't move in this, because every time anything moves outside of black and white, the whole fucking roster goes nuts, and you would not believe what comes our way. You know, so as much as marketing, promotion, doing this, doing that, it doesn't matter, because the repercussions of bending systems that we've already put in place to keep everybody happy and keep everything fair, you can't break them. So we just got to stick with what we got to do and take the heat that comes with it when someone gets pissed off.
You've got all these athletes from Ireland, across Europe, even in America now, but specifically on Ireland, is there anyone that you see as the next breakout star in Cage Warriors from the current crop?
From the island?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're about a year away from having a couple of names at the top. You know, I think I do believe the Shelley brothers are going to do something. You know, they've had a couple of blimps in the road, but I believe they're going to do something. Adam Darby, I think Adam Darby is going to be a special talent coming through. I'd like to see James Sheehan pick up a W next week, because I think James's path. Obviously, he works as well. I think if we could get James into a full-time athlete situation, I think he's got all the credentials to be a solid contender in that division. So they're the kind of names I'll be looking at in terms of who we think is going to go somewhere over the next 12 months.
You mentioned Adam Darby there. I noticed he's over in California in the MMA Academy. What's the kind of story with that? What's that like? And I guess what's the purpose of the show and all about it, really?
So there's two things. There's two things going on with the MMA Academy. So there's a 7,500 square foot facility opened up, and it's a professional athlete only facility. It's like a mini PI. It's not open to the public. There's a TV show going on, filming everything that goes on there, and in the houses all the guys are staying in. And there's 20 plus pros on the mat twice a day, 5 days a week. The weekends off. It honestly is like the opportunity of a lifetime for these athletes. You know, they're being developed into a team, and that team will train for 3 months in California. They'll go off and fight. They'll come back a month later. They'll train for 3 months. They'll go off and fight. They'll come back, and so on. In about 2 years, you're probably looking at that team will probably be 40 plus, only pros. And, you know, you may be looking at all the champions coming out of that gym over the next 2 years.
Graham, you mentioned about building a couple of the Irish stars on it, on Cage Warriors roster right now. Looking ahead to 2024, what plans do you have, or if you have any plans in place, maybe to bring Cage Warriors back to Dublin or back to other places in Ireland in 2024? Do you have that laid out yet, or is it a decision that's going to be made over the coming months?
It's laid out nearly 3 months ago, Ian. You try and get a venue on a Saturday night anywhere in Europe right now, buddy, and you're probably looking at 2025 if you're not ahead of the curve booking dates, because I'm telling you, trying to get a Friday and a Saturday together in any venue that you can run shows in that works for you, that's not on a bank holiday, it's not an Easter holiday, that's not on the same day as some fucking Champion League football game that you can't do in that city because the team is potentially fucking playing there. It's like the moving parts in locking down schedules and dates is post-pandemic still an impact on putting on live shows. And to give you a prime example, we spent the best part of a year trying to book a venue in Paris to run a show Cage Warriors debut in Paris. And every venue that we found, either we had a date booked already on that date, on their availability, so we couldn't move the dates that we had booked somewhere else. The venue didn't have a Friday, but we had the Saturday. And it was just impossible, to the point where I was like, this is just fucking crazy. So our 2024 schedule, all 16 shows as of today, are booked and penciled.
Sure, it sounds like the February or September might have an open date now. No, next year.
Yeah, February could be an open date too. Yeah, no, we're good. We have a good few dates. We'll announce them when they're ready.
Sounds good.
We'll be on the island. Don't worry, we'll be there.
Graham, what do you think about? Look, obviously there's reports back and forth about Bellator, so nobody seems to really know what's going on. But obviously, Bellator Europe have had a very strong focus on Dublin the last number of years, a show twice a year. What do you make of it, and the potential of that no longer being a thing potentially in Ireland?
You know, it would be a shame to see them go, because they've been paying a lot of fighters. A lot of fighters are getting paid, and that's the key thing at the end of the day, is to get the guys that want to be professional athletes, A, to get them paid, and B, to get them where they want to go to. And Bellator has been a nice step in for the guys who want to take the payment line versus the guys who want the UFC accolade. You know, it's a crazy thing where you could go into a gym and chat to a team, and you'd ask guys, raise your hand if you want the UFC, or raise your hand if you want, and ask you two questions. Raise your hand if you want the UFC, or raise your hand if you just want our money now. You'll get a 50-50 split. You'll get guys who will just raise their hand and go, I don't care if I'm going to the UFC. I just want to make my money now. I've got a life to live. And then you get other guys who will say, the money doesn't bother me. I want that UFC accolade. I want to retire with that UFC accolade. I want people to know I fought in one of the best platforms with the best accolade I could get in the sport. So if they are to disappear, it would be a shame, because that kind of removes a big chunk of the game that, you know, fighters are getting paid in. So it's a time will tell thing, I guess.
If that was to happen, and I asked you this after the last event, and I'm not trying to stir up the whole, you know, SBG Cage Wars stuff again, but if it were to collapse, for lack of a better word, there would be a lot of fighters without contracts, which is not a good thing in Ireland. Would you be looking at, you know, prospective new additions to the roster if all of a sudden a crop of talent suddenly opens up and are no longer under contract with a big promotion? Yeah,
we're one step at a time. We'll just see where we go with all that. We're one step at a time. I'm more concentrating on what we have than what we don't have. Or we have a very strong roster, and we have a lot of guys. And we do 16, maybe 18 shows a year. So my priority is to keep my commitments and keep my word to the guys that I've signed with Cage Warriors. And I've always said that even within team meetings internally, like we could get to a point where, you know, we don't have, and I've said this previously before, I've said it to you the last time I spoke to you, we don't have the wallets of Viacom, we don't have the wallets of PFL, we don't have the wallet of the UFC, but what we do bring is we'll build your career like nobody else will ever build it for you at a time in your career when you need it. And that to me is invaluable. So we'll concentrate on the guys that we have, and the guys that I give my word to that sign with us for whatever time it is they sign with us, they've got the priority over everybody else. And if we've got 16 shows and we've got X amount of athletes already signed, the room for bringing new people in is selective. And it's got to make sense for us to bring them in. So when that time comes, you know, we're here. There's other organizations here. The sport isn't what it was 5-6 years ago. You know, there's plenty of options out there these days. So we'll see where that goes.
Graham, two last quick ones from me. We really appreciate the time. Rhys McKee, obviously his return to the UFC didn't go to plan. Is there any plans in place for him maybe to compete again before the year is out, or what's the plans for Rhys going forward?
Rhys will probably be in the new year. To my knowledge, nearly all the cards for the rest of the year they're done on the UFC. There's no more matching as such To be locked down in the UFC for the rest of the year. I mean, we're only 2.5 months to the end of the year. 700 athletes there. I don't see anybody else getting any kind of matches. They're probably the matches they've got now for the rest of the year, probably all signed and waiting to be released. So I would say a lot of the guys now will be fighting in the new year.
100%. Not really Irish related, but I have to ask you. Paddy Pimblett versus Tony Ferguson was announced, created a storm online. I love the fight personally. I think it's a great matchup for both guys on both sides. What do you think of the match? Obviously, you like the matchup too. You kind of agreed to it and set it up for Paddy. What do you think of all the kind of controversy and all the talk around that fight? And how do you see that as a fight for Paddy?
I think it's a great fight. I genuinely believe it's an absolutely fucking great fight for both guys. Okay. Paddy's fighting. This whole thing about Tony coming off losses, like this is a casual MMA fan opinion, right? Because if you're a real MMA person, you know Tony Ferguson is no fucking joke, no matter who he's in there with. A casual MMA fan is going to throw he's coming off 3 or 4 losses. Go fuck off and learn about the sport, man. Tony Ferguson is no joke to anyone, and even in the top fucking 10 today. That is a tough fight for any athlete, no matter who you are. So for Paddy, it's a great fight. It's a nice fight for him to go in and test himself against a true legend. That is going to cause him problems. Paddy's going to cause him problems too. So yeah, I think it's a great fight. It's got the entire industry talking, you know, and you know that's what everybody wants. People want interesting fights, and that's an interesting fight. So hold on to your hats because there's going to be fucking chaos in Vegas.
Sure is. I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping to head down to that myself as well. Last one for me, obviously, the main reason that we're getting you on, Cage Warriors 161, Graham, this Saturday on UFC Fight Pass live from the RDS. Give us a quick breakdown of the cards, maybe some of the fights that you're looking forward to and like how you feel the event will play out.
Yeah. Obviously, like, you know, this is going to be a typical return to the island show with Cage Warriors. The atmosphere is going to be fucking immense. There's going to be a couple of names on the card that are going to pop out as future stars from performances. The main card is looking pretty solid for us. You know, it's, you know, between Hughes and Jan Hagens, that's really got people talking. Mason and Jan is another fight it's got ramifications. You know, Mason Jones is on a side in his career right now where every fight is the most important fight he's going to have because he's in a rebuild stage. You know. James Sheehan, the same. James Sheehan needs to win that fight. Leon Hill is in a situation where, you know, if he were to win, he's on a big win streak. So there's another conversation there, depending on what happens with the result of that fight. You got Paddy McCorry and Samir Kaddi. As a middleweight fight, that's a very interesting fight to see who pops out the winner in that one. And then, you know, interesting to see what Solomon Simon does. You got Taku fighting there. There's a lot of repercussion conversations off the results of these fights, and that's how we see every card we put together is who moves into what slot after which event on the results here, and it's a tricky scenario for us because there is a lot of talent in a lot of divisions, and the 45, welter, 45, and lightweight divisions in Cage Warriors, they're fucking shark tanks, man. They're absolute shark tanks. And I'd argue with anybody, you've got the best in Europe in those divisions. With any organization outside of the UFC, I believe we have the best guys in those divisions, and I'd be confident of putting them up against anybody.
Ian said it was his last question. Now I have one more, so that doesn't really count, right?
Plenty time. Go on, carry on.
We have 100 questions for you.
Look, I'm really looking forward to this event. One, because it's only down the road from me, the beautiful south side of Dublin. Thanks very much. And two, I think Ian Dean, everyone knows how great a job he does. As you mentioned, the Paddy McCorry Samir Kaddi fight. The last Dublin show we had Ryan Shelley and Tobias Hirita. That was an absolute cracker. But my question to you is: has anyone ever tried to poach Ian Dean from Cage Warriors?
I'm trying to kick the fucker out. He won't leave. He's part of the furniture, man. He's not going to go anywhere. He's Ian Dean is Cage Warriors in his blood, man. You know, it's
surely someone must, at some point, because like he's so well renowned as like I think he's the best matchmaker in the world, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
There has to be at some point people sniffing around.
Yeah. Well, you know, if he wants to go, he can go. But I tell you this much, you ain't no fucking chance, man. When he dies, there'll be a CW on his gravestone. I'm telling you, I won't even fucking have anything else. It'll just have CW because it's in his blood. He is the driving force behind what we do. He is to many the matchmaker, but Ian Dean is the most competitive man and the top end talent scouts that I've seen in the sport for a very long time. You know, and he's been a Cage Warriors since long before me. He's been a Cage Warriors 2002, 2003 from the ground up, and yeah. There's little CWs just floating around in his blood. A lot of people have little red blood cells. He's got little CWs floating around in his.
Little yellow.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a solid part of the company. He's been there a long time, like I said, longer than me. And he loves what he does. He loves, you know, scouting the talent at an early stage. We bring him in, we develop him up. And yeah.
This is probably one I should be asking Ian Dean, but Adam Shelley and Adam Cullen look to have verbally agreed to fight after the weekend. Is that one that you're looking at in the pipeline?
Not one that's even a conversation right now, but if they're going at each other on social medias, I'm sure it'll pop up as a conversation at some point when we're matching events and putting names in what slots in our matchmaking meetings. I'm sure that'll prop up. Oh, by the way, Shelley and Cullen have had a ding dong online, if that's where it's happening. I don't know. But yeah, it's not something that I'm privy to or aware of at this point. Yeah.
Last one from me. It's been 2019 was the last time that Cage Warriors went to Cork. I know you're a proud Cork man yourself. Do you think you'd ever bring promotion back there?
It's not off the cards. It would be a situation of what the roster is and who's on the roster at any one time as to that will kind of dictate where we go to. A lot of the cities you will go to, they would be dictated by roster, date availability on venues. You know, so the majority of it is date availability. If we're cornered and we've got nowhere else to go, or certain situations just don't make sense, and we end up in a city and you're like scratching your heads, going, "Why the fuck did they book that place?" You know, it's because there's nowhere else on that weekend, and that's the only weekend we have to get something on. So. It comes down to then the roster. Like I think when we did the last Cork show, we had a bunch of Cork guys on the roster back then, and it made sense to do a show there because at that any given time, you know, dates weren't working out somewhere else, and everything just aligned that let's just take it there. So if it comes to it where a few more Southern Irish guys get on the cards, get on the roster, get signed, and it makes sense, we'll go there. Everything's an open book over here. It's a case of what, when, and what makes sense.
Official last question from me now, Graham. You've had some success, obviously, by coinciding a Cage Warriors card on a Friday night along with a UFC card on a Saturday night. Is that what you're hoping to do with the eventual return to the UFC back to Ireland?
It would be nice. I'm not sure it's big enough to do that, to do Cage Warriors and the UFC in one weekend, Friday, Saturday. That's something we'd need to look into. It would be fun to do, but it works in London. It works in London for us. At the moment, we can't even get hotel rooms in Dublin, man. It's that tricky. You know, we've had to hold back what the event hotel is right down to the last minute because everybody wants to get rooms for friends and family and everybody coming that's staying over. And it's like, if we give out the hotel, then we can't get rooms for the fighters that we need to get rooms for. So we're in a situation where we've had to scramble a little bit to actually get the right accommodation for crew, for cameramen, for everybody coming in from the lighting rigs, for setups, for fighters, coaches, staff. It's not a small gig, and a lot of people don't realize until you actually see the ins and outs and the logistics of a Cage Warriors show. I don't think Dublin could handle 2 shows on a Friday night of Cage Warriors size and the UFC. It would need to be planned 2 years in advance, because venue availability and hotels in Dublin right now, it's the hardest city in Europe to actually get anything done. You may not know that because you're not booking hotels out. You're not booking 100 rooms in a hotel. So I can tell you for a fact, it's one of the hardest.
They ain't cheap these days.
No, sure ain't.
It's not. It's one of the hardest cities in Europe right now to do business. It's fucking difficult.
Well, hopefully, for our sake, we can make something happen along the lines. Even if we do have to wait 2 years, I'd happily wait 2 years for that to happen. But all eyes are on Cage Warriors 161 this Saturday, live on UFC Fight Pass. Do we still have ticket availability, Graham? Is the event sold out?
I believe. Yeah, no, it's not sold out yet. I believe there's like maybe 200-300 or something you can go and grab. But we'll have a big crowd there at the RDS on Saturday. But there's still tickets available.
100%. You can head over there to Ticketmaster to grab those tickets. If you're not going to be able to go there, UFC Fight Pass is where you can watch the event. It's always going to be a big show when Cage Warriors comes back to Dublin. Graham, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. Hopefully this is the first of many appearances on the Auld Triangle podcast. It's been a pleasure.
No problem, lads. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you at the RDS Friday, Saturday.
Cheers, Graham.
Thanks, Graham.
Take care, fellas. Bye-bye.
Brilliant to hear from Graham Boylan. We really appreciated his time as well, and asked him about 700 questions, as Andy was going to say. It was always one last question, Andy. Wasn't it? One last question.
One more.
You have to deal with when we were interviewing people and you're doing that one where you had to deal with it with all 3 of us there. We could have asked them 100 more questions, but it was
great,
fantastic.
Though, isn't it? You just be like, yeah, this is my last question, or my second last one. Now, Chris, you take your third last one.
Brilliant stuff. We're great to hear his thoughts on the card itself. Let's share our thoughts on the card itself. Let's start with Paul Hughes versus Jan Hagen's lightweight number 1 contender fight. Winner will move on to possibly take on George Hardwick for the lightweight title. I think we just can start this conversation and just saying it's fucking brilliant that we're getting to see Paul Hughes fight again. We can waste our time here and talk about should the UFC sign him, should he not? No, we'll talk about what's happening. He did the interview with Shawnee and he spoke with Pete as well and shared his thoughts. I think that's dead and buried. Now, what we do is we'll focus on the future, and the future is a fight against Jan Hagens, and it's a difficult fight as well, but it's one that will bring the absolute very best in Paul Hughes, in my opinion. And I want to see great fighters fight, and I'm just delighted that we've come to a place where we're in a Paul Hughes fight week again. It's been so long since we last seen her. Crazy to think the last time we seen him was that absolute demolition of Jordan Vucenic to win the featherweight title. He's moved up to lightweight now, to new pastures, and he's coming in against one of the toughest guys in the division, Andy. It's going to be a fantastic fight. It's going to be a fantastic occasion, and I'm sure that you share the same excitement as myself about this fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm buzzing to see Paul Hughes back again. We won't get into it, but I do. I wish it wasn't on Cage Warriors, even though I am looking forward to it. It adds so much though to add him to this card. To be fair, like this has increased my excitement level significantly, and he's fighting a guy, a really tough guy. You know, Jan Hagens, people may not know him. Like he's not like exactly a household name, but like he's got some serious wins and performances, and his last 3 under the Cage Warriors banner have been ferocious wins. Now, I think Paul Hughes is a great fighter. I know Paul Hughes is a great fighter. I don't know yet. I don't know. The answer is I don't know if Jan Hagens is a great fighter. I think he's a very good fighter. He could be a great fighter, but he's certainly a guy who's going to test Paul. He's a big guy. I think that there are opportunities for Paul to get him out of there. I watched the Kieran Lister fight that Hagens had, and I think that in that first round, or even more than the first round, he had his back for a lot. And that's a position where I think Paul could potentially, flatten him out and unload. But it's a dangerous fight. Like when you're coming back, all the talk has been you're going to the UFC. Everyone thinks you're going to the UFC. You're coming back. You're going up a weight class. You're not fighting for a title, and you're fighting a guy who he can put you out of there if you slip up. So a tough test for Paul here. This is no easy cakewalk, and it's one that he'll need to be on his A game for coming in.
100%, yeah, very well said. And Caoilte, look at, like Andy said there, you have the difficulty of the task, of the challenge of the fight, but you also have the pressure dangle over you, and for lack of a better term, I'll call it pressure of, wanting to put in a good performance here, wanting to make a statement, and wanting to prove that UFC needs to have you in there as a fighter. Because Graham said it in the interview, and I couldn't agree with him more. Or maybe it wasn't Graham, it was Paddy McCorry, actually, sorry, in an interview that we'll talk about in just a few minutes. Paul uses his UFC caliber level at a ranked level for me. I think you put him straight in there into the top 15, and he's taken guys out there in the UFC. But, he's got to get the job done here first. And that adds a little bit of extra pressure too, Caoilte, doesn't it?
It does. There's so much kind of different variables involved with the pressure here. You've got the crowd being in Dublin, trying to kind of please them. You've got the case that the UFC opportunity might be dangling in front of you if you do win. You're moving up a weight class and you're competing against a lad who's doing pretty well and getting a lot of finishes. So, there's a lot of pressure to get a win here maybe, but I feel like he's the type of guy that thrives under this. We've seen it before in his title fights, the 5-round fights, all the way through his career. And it's a very, very tough task, but I do feel like he's more than capable. He's more than up for it. And I feel like a win here should, if not, again, with title shot, but hopefully it gets him to the UFC, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm curious to see. I think, the easy route for Paul would be to kind of take that fight down, like Andy said, and, put Jan on his back. And I think he absolutely is head and shoulders above him on the skill set. I'm be almost certain to say that he's probably head and shoulders above him in the striking department too. Obviously, if you choose to strike him here, Caoilte, you're opening up the chances. But at the same time, you go out here and you strike and you finish Jan Quayhagen's on the feet. That's the exact kind of statement you want to make in a fight like this, isn't it?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. And especially since you're gone from featherweight up to lightweight, the power is going to be a little different. The thing is, we may even see a whole different Paul Hughes where he comes out and his striking has a bit more pop in it, that he can show off a finish. And we might see complete, as Andy said, you said that taken down might be the easier, but he might come in here and surprise us all and just knock him out in one round. It could be a whole different Paul Hughes. And that's what makes this a little bit more exciting. High risk, high reward. And I love it. It just adds so much to this card.
Yeah, brilliant main event. Delighted. Andy, you want to share your thoughts there? Yeah, you have one.
No, I just wanted to give one little shout out. It's Quayhagen's second time facing an Irishman. He's also fought Philip Mulpeter, who beat him back in 2018. A legend. For anyone who's only following the Irish scene a little while, look up Philip Mulpeter's fight against John Donnelly. Unreal.
Honey Badger. I love it. Moving on, I'll just give a mention to the co-main event, a fantastic fight, Mason Jones versus Jan Lies. Obviously, Graham Boylan just mentioned that could have been the potential main event. Gladly, we've got the Paul Hughes situation figured out, and he jumped in for the main event slot. But good support there in the co-main event. Moving on down there, we have Ryan Shelley, who's coming in to take on Yordi Baquez in a welterweight. It's announced as it's a featherweight bout. Sorry, just the bout order here. Excuse me. Ryan Shelley, big one coming in here. Andy, you spoke with him ahead of this fight. Obviously, coming back off of that defeat from Tobias Harila, had a couple of good moments in that fight, but it wasn't to be. With Harila getting the finish in round 3, got a big point to prove here after his first professional loss, and I'm very, very excited to see. Like, for me, I'm more excited for this fight after watching Adam Shelley's performance as well and seeing the levels that he brought into the cage, and I'm expecting the exact same thing from Ryan Shelley here as well in this fight.
Yeah, we talked about, I don't know how much we went into it at the time, but Ryan Shelley was going into that fight and he purposely didn't speak about this until now because he didn't want to make an excuse, but he was going into that fight with a broken nose. He broke his nose again in the fight, and I believe I'm a fiend for interviewing people and then forgetting what they said until I go and watch it back. But I think he might have been, I don't know if it was an orbital, but he definitely had another break anyway off the back of that. So he had to take some time away, and you've never experienced a loss like that before in kickboxing or in MMA or in Taekwondo, and then you're forced to take a bit of time off and just sit and reflect. So he's had the time to do that. He's come back to training, and now he knows that look, he sees himself right at the top of the division very soon, but he has to go in and get it back in the win column first. So Jordi Backs is a guy, he's a tough guy. I believe he comes from more so a judo background, but he does have, he's a Dutch guy, who are typically great, very solid strikers and kickboxers. He fought a hard-fought fight against Antonio Sheldon, I believe, to a draw, I think it was. So he'll present a test here for Shelley, but I thought Shelley was looking brilliant in that last fight against Tarilla up until towards the end of the second round. So very interested to see how he rebounds here, and look, he's one of the guys who I'd be looking at as potential future champions. Obviously, we need to see how he rebounds here, but he definitely has the ceiling to make it to a Cage Warriors title.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the featherweight division right now, as Graham Boylan suggested in the interview, is shit hot. There's no other way to describe it right now. And I think, a good solid win here for Ryan Shelley puts him right in the mix and sets up a couple of really exciting fights. Caoilte, I'm going to move over and ask you about Jimbo Slice, James Sheehan, in a similar enough position to Ryan Shelley, coming in off of a loss from Oban Elliott, with his chance to kind of get back, rebound again, and get the win. In a division where a guy who he's beaten already in O'Neil Brown is coming in and fighting for the title now. So that'll add a little bit of extra motivation into the fight. Not that he needs it, but very excited to see Jimbo Slice back in action. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do against Oli Santilali.
Yeah, for sure. He could really launch himself back up into that title contention, which we would have spoken about before the Oban Elliott fight with a win here. He's got a tough enough task now in Oli. He's, the Finns are no joke, and I think I've watched a bit of Ollie in the past, and he's a very good grappler, is the best way of putting it. Very tricky on the mat. And I feel like James Sheehan's he's in a fantastic place in Team Reno to train with grapplers that'll actually be able to replicate and help him with the type of things that Ollie will offer in this fight. Then on the feet, I think that's where James actually has the advantage, and even if he gets on top of him as well, I do feel like he'd be the best there. Obviously, a very experienced opponent who's seen a lot of high-level guys, but a fantastic opportunity, really, and a really good fight, tricky fight that could really deliver, I feel.
Yeah, I think so too, Andy. I'm sure you share the excitement about Jimbo as well heading in there. Maybe I'll just hand over quick thoughts on James Sheehan, and we can also bring you in to discuss maybe Takamandu is coming in to take on Alexander Pirev as well on the card in the bantamweight division.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'd say about James Sheehan is, one, I always love watching a fight, and two is we've already seen how he's dealt with loss in his pro career, and it's spurred a phenomenal run. So there's no doubt in my mind that he'll have taken things from that loss to Oban Elliott and developed his game considerably. So I expect to see a revamped and a renewed James Sheehan coming into this one. So, I'd be quite confident in that. I'm hoping to speak to him tomorrow out in Team Rhino, so I'll be interested to get a vibe on how he's feeling ahead of this one. Taka is coming off a phenomenal performance against Grant Ogborn. Was that Italy? Or anyway, doesn't matter where it was, but it was against Grant Ogborn the last time out, and he went up a weight class, took it on short notice, and he talked with us. We had him on, and he talked about how it's the mental side of things that's always kind of held him back, and it really does seem, when I spoke to him yesterday, that things are just clicking. He's comfortable, like he's comfortable in where he is as a fighter, and more importantly as a human being. So things seem to be clicking for him in the training room and on fight night now. So he's coming for redemption here. He obviously suffered a loss where he was telling me that his mind was telling him one thing and his body was doing another when he was fighting Benoit Blanc. So the specific incident he referenced was the flying knee that he threw that ultimately led to him getting taken down. So he wants to right the wrongs of Dublin in April, so he gets an opportunity to do that on Saturday night.
Yeah, very excited to see the cat back in action. Next on the agenda, lads, is Paddy McCorry versus Samir Kadhi in the middleweight division. A really standout fight for me. Two really, really good guys going head-to-head here at 185 pounds, and we won't wax lyrical about it. We'll head over to the man himself. We'll talk to Paddy McCorry about that fight and a couple of other things as well. So I'm going to send it over to Andy.
We are now joined by one of the hottest prospects in Ireland, middleweight fighter fighting out of Fight Academy Ireland up the north. Paddy McCorry is back this Saturday at Cage Warriors 161, taking on Samir Kadhi. Paddy, how are you?
I'm very good, bro. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I suppose we're the starter to your Sunday dinner here, are we?
Yes, just waiting on some food after here.
What's for dinner, and can we have some?
What's for dinner? No dinner gets left for spare in my house, bro. I'd be taking it all myself.
Do you know? I mean, we're only a few days away from the fight, so I imagine the dinner isn't quite as appealing as it usually is.
Well, I'm only allowed like 150 grams of carbs today, but I still be eating pretty much. Like I've been eating as much as I can up until this point, so I don't really have to alter it much until today, tomorrow. Just then I'll start doing it then.
Okay, what are your cuts like? Is it a big cut for you? Are you all right?
Well, nah, it's not too bad now. Well, I'm 92 kilo now, so I don't want to be any less than 92 kilo. I'm eating as much as I can to even like stay above 90 kilo. Like sometimes I'm coming home from training and I'm just eating meals when I'm not hungry, just to try and keep the calories in and keep the weight up. Because I made that mistake before when I went over and fought James Webb, but like went over at like 86 kilo and had no cut at all, and then I felt that in the fight.
Okay, so should be a smoother one this time. Well, look, you're a few days out now, as I said. Cage Wars 161 in the RDS, not in the 3 Arena this time. You're coming down the road, some might say, to the south side of Dublin, the beautiful south side of Dublin. How are you feeling ahead of it?
I'm feeling unbelievable, mate. I just got done my last hard session there today, this morning up in the gym, so it's all systems go now.
There was some brilliant videos I saw on Pat McAllister's story there, where yourself and Paul Hughes were. I'm assuming that was the session, was it, where you were going through fight simulation?
Yeah.
It looked like an unbelievable atmosphere.
Yeah, it was an unbelievable atmosphere. It was just like a fighter circuit thing that they done, after the normal sparring was on, and then me and Paul came up and done a fighter circuit. Just 3 fives, basically being pushed to your max in every position. Just trying to replicate a fight scenario as much as possible, and of course it helped with all the lads there, like making a wee bit of noise and creating some atmosphere. So it was brilliant, and it gives you a good wee boost going in the fight week.
Does it actually that is actually beneficial to kind of get yourself used to all of that craziness that you're going to be experiencing there next Saturday night? Is that something that's a regular in FAI? You'll do that fight simulation with everybody going nuts?
Well, like every Sunday before the fight, we always do like just the last fighter circuit for the guys who are fighting, and usually everyone always stays and really tries to get behind the lads and create some noise, because it does actually give you like a wee spike in adrenaline whenever people are screaming at you. Like whenever you're training and whenever you're fighting, and it's just trying to stay composed, keep your shape, keep your form whenever things are that chaotic. So I do think it is beneficial.
Paddy, obviously you're fighting this weekend, but you also have Paul Hughes back. He's back. He's not in the UFC. We won't talk about that, but he is back in Cage Wars fighting in the main event here. What's it like to have him? Obviously, I know he's around the gym all the time, and he's training with them kind of day in, day out. But to him be preparing for a fight alongside you, what's that like? Yeah,
it's unbelievable. Actually, I didn't think I would be sharing a card with Paul in the near future, because I thought it was a done deal that he would have been off the UFC after the Vucanic fight. Like, I believe that him and Vucanic are just such a completely different level to the rest of that division, and you've seen what he done to him. So I was like, what else is there for him in Cage Wars? It was a cert to go to the UFC, especially when people are getting signed to the UFC who haven't got a belt or anything. So it is good just being like training for a fight and getting ready for a fight with him, because there's no one who be more switched on than Paul. You know what I mean? He brings a very good energy to the gym, so it's been amazing preparing for a fight alongside of him again.
Would you notice a difference in mentality here with Paul? Look at, he spoke with Sean and with Pizzi ahead of this fight, kind of coming in here with a point to prove, to finish. I mean, he spoke very well. Obviously went through a difficult time with everything that went on, not getting signed, but he seems laser focused here and wants to get the task done on Saturday night.
Yeah. Well, he does. He seems a wee bit more vicious this time, but to be honest, Paul's always switched on. Like, I have never spoken to Paul and he hasn't been switched on. Whether he has a fight lined up or he doesn't, he's always in the same mindset. Like, he's always switched on. He's 100% committed to the game. So there hasn't been much changes in like his attitude towards training, because it's always been the same. But this time he does seem a wee bit more vicious, like he has a point to prove. Yeah.
And how does it help you as a fighter being around somebody like that?
Well, it's good because the high tide raises all ships. Like Paul is chasing like he wants to win UFC titles. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't want to settle for any less. So whenever someone's pushing that much and putting in that much work in the gym, no one wants to be outworked in the gym. So when he's pushing that much, it makes you want to push that much. So I think the whole gym just follows his lead really when he's up there grafting and getting after it. So it's good.
We saw Paul kind of traveling over and getting work with different gyms. Obviously, he was over in Florida and everything like that. You've chose to do that yourself. You're over in Thailand for a little bit over at Bang Tao. How do you like doing that, spreading yourself out, getting different looks, getting different spars? It's obviously beneficial to you. That's why you're doing it. But going over to Thailand, what kind of benefits have you found off that particular trip? And is that something that you want to continue doing?
Yeah, well, I think it's always beneficial, like getting outside the gym and getting different looks, even from like a coaching perspective as well as getting different rounds, because I do feel like we have the best coaching in the world at Fight Academy Ireland, and I also am not stuck for rounds up there. So it wasn't like something like I need rounds or I need a different set of eyes and coaching. It wasn't like that at all. It was just a change of scenery and getting out and just starting my camp out there and start building the fitness up while I was out there, so I could come back and just hit the ground running. But I think it does just a lot for your confidence, because there's such a high level in the gym that all the rounds you're getting up there are so tough, and like trying to land things on people, you know, like when you're learning the same things at the same time, it can prove to be difficult. So sometimes you don't really feel like you have things in your arsenal because you're not really catching them on people who are in the gym because they're learning at the same time. But as soon as you step out of the gym and you go to another gym, you're like, fuck, I'm catching these guys with a lot more stuff than I'm usually catching people with the gym in. So it was really good for my confidence that way. Like, for example, just one example, it's so hard to get on anyone's neck in our gym. Like if anyone comes to the gym, they'll tell you how hard it is to get a choke, whether it be a guillotine or whether it be a rear naked choke when you're on people's back. Because if you come to our gym and you can't defend your neck, it's going to get ripped off 100 times a night. Like if you go with Pat, he'll rip your neck off if you can't defend it. So every single person in our gym is so good at defending the neck, so you'd almost believe that you weren't that good at choking people because of how good everyone is at defending the neck and creating scrambles when you attack their neck. And then when you go to the other gyms and you're catching people so easily and getting their neck and you see it like popping up everywhere, then it really like makes you believe that there's other areas of your game that is world class, you know what I mean?
Bang Tao is obviously where you are over there. That's where we see a lot of people going over there. What is it about Bang Tao for you? Obviously getting the new looks, but is there any is it just the sharpening your striking skills you're looking to, or does Bang Tao offer much more than that?
Yeah, well, there's people from all around the world in that Bang Tao. Like I was seeing like we Dagestanis and Russians and all, you know, like going over there training. So I was pretty curious to see if them guys had something that they could show me that I haven't experienced before. You know what I mean? But when I went over there, all it did is give me more confidence, to be honest. Like one of the best grapplers over like MMA grappling was John Mitchell, and he's Irish. So I really do think that our country is just like, we're definitely leading the way when it comes to combat sports, like, and like them Russians and stuff. Sometimes they can be very good in one areas, but they have big massive holes in another area. You know what I mean? So it was good just to get over and get going with them and just realizing that they're all human, like, because you're all, like, whenever you don't train anywhere else, you think maybe there's another level out there that you haven't experienced. But truth be told, that we are definitely a step ahead. In Fight Academy Ireland, we're definitely leading the way.
I'd say you have a few mad stories from Thailand. John Mitchell was on here and he was saying it's a mad L spot out there.
Yeah, Nathan Kelly almost got eaten by a snake. He was telling us on here. Do you have any mad stories?
Well, the place is absolutely riddled in staff. Like, it's like
as in like staph infection.
Yeah, staph infection. Yeah. Like there's just staph infection everywhere. Like in all the gyms, it's riddled in staff. So trying to like stay away from the staff like is hard. Like it looks like every other gym you go to, people in it have staff. But
what do you think that is? Is it just cleanliness, or
I think there's just so much people like coming in and out of the gym.
Okay, yeah.
Constantly rotating like people from all over the place. It's not like a gym culture where you say where Pat and Shando would have control of everyone who's coming into the gym and they could pass a message on. Whereas over there, if you pass a message on one week, like the next week, there's going to be a full new mass of different people. So it may be a wee bit harder to track over there. I don't really know what the reason is, but there seems to be a lot of it.
Were you flying around on the mopeds?
Yeah, flying around the moped. It's probably pretty dodgy when you look back on it, like just flying around with no helmet on. But it's like the moped drivers like have right away over there. Like if you're driving on a moped, a car will almost move out of the way for you. If you're on the moped, it's strange. Like,
and was the food?
Just waking up. Sorry.
No, I was saying, I'd say the food was unreal over there as well.
Yeah, the food was unreal, mate. That's it. You're just waking up in the morning, like going and getting some food, driving on the moped down to the gym, come back from the gym, chilling there for a while, getting some more food on the moped, back to training again. So it is a good lifestyle. But I'm glad to be home and back training in Fight Academy Ireland. There's nowhere else I'd rather be training.
Absolutely. And look, you put up a post there recently. You said on October 14th, I go from prospect to contender. What's your mentality coming into this one? Like, you've obviously, we had John before after your last win, and you put on that incredible showing and the highlight reel finish, the flying knee, the head kick. What are you trying to prove here?
I'm going out there to prove that I'm ready to hang with all these top guys. You know what I mean? Like, they were on our gym saying that they couldn't get anyone to fight this French guy. And I put my hand up right away and said, I'll fight him, no problem. Some French reporters have reached out to me and said that this guy's over in France saying that people don't fight him. So they must think this guy is good, you know what I mean? So I want to go and make an example of this guy and take him out and show that I'm a different level. Like, I knew, like, I was trying not, like, to brush my career. I know, like, I don't want to try and run before I walk, but I also know that it's only a matter of time before I'm at the top, especially in this division in Cage Warriors. Like, I'm coming in here to go through everyone and take the belt. You know what I mean? And I do rate this French guy. I know that he is good, but I need someone good to show my level. I believe that the better people I'm in there with, the better I'm going to look, because I have an extremely high fight IQ, and I know that I have, like, a very good eye for the sport. So I need someone who's a high level. It takes two to tango, you know what I mean? I need someone who's a high level to make me look good. So I think this guy is the perfect opponent. He looks the part. He's another big juice head. He's going to come in thinking that he's going to do well, and I'm going to absolutely destroy him. So I do believe that after this, they'll be like, fuck, he's not just a kid anymore. Like, he is coming for this belt, you know what I mean? People will start taking me serious after this one.
Paddy, I've come out and said, and no pressure, that I believe that you have more than enough ability to go ahead, become Cage Warriors middleweight champion, and move on further from there. To get yourself to that, okay, I feel that you have the ability over the next couple of fights to get there, but what's your mindset in terms of, do you want to get there and be the most prepared and most well-rounded mixed martial artist, rather than say, win a couple of quick fights in succession, get there? It's more so the preparation you do to get there will kind of cement your status as champion when you get there, and then further move on to the UFC or wherever you want to go after that. What's your mindset and when you're thinking about your approach to getting to the title and obviously staying there and progressing after that?
Yeah, well, I know that I have the skills to become a world champion, but there are some things that you can only learn whenever you're in there, you know what I mean? And I don't want to be put in with these guys who are way too much experienced than me, and they're beating me just purely based on experience when I may have a higher skill set than them, you know what I mean? It's just time in the cage that they have over me. Like, I want to fight people around the same experience, build that cage time up, and then when I'm ready, I'll completely take out whoever has the belt at that point, you know what I mean? Like, I'm probably a wee bit delusional sometimes, because from I've turned pro, I'd be looking at these world champions thinking that I would smoke them. You know what I mean?
But it's not really delusional, Paddy, because you've already been in there with a former middleweight champion, and it was a pretty close fight. I was ready, and that was your second fight as a professional. So it's like,
it's funny. It's funny how you're saying, I was just going to piggyback on that. It's funny how you're saying, I don't want to rush my career, and I want to fight guys with similar experience to me. You're going in there and fighting fucking James Webb, former middleweight champion, in your first Cage Warriors fight.
Yeah, but that's because we were fucking waiting for ages on a fight, you know what I mean? They're like some of the fight offers you get are fucking insane. Like, you have 2 pro fights and they want you to fight people with 25 fights, and you're like, it just doesn't make any sense at all. So whenever that James Webb fight came up, I was already torturing Shandon and Pat, saying, like, get me all them guys, and like, I'll go at them. But to be fair, in that James Webb fight, it did just show me that you can't buy experience. Like, it doesn't matter how good you think you are or how skillful you think you are. Like, you cannot buy that time in the cage. And when you're in there with a crafty veteran like James Webb, who's had so much fights and had so much time spent in that cage, there's wee ways to know how to, like, steal rounds and take fights on you, and I don't want that to happen again. Like, I learned from that fight so much, and I learned not to try and rush my career after it. Just take one fight at a time, and then I'll get to where I want to be. You know what I mean?
Is it a case of biding your time and picking the right fights and not taking a fight like that again purely to protect your own development?
I just want to keep taking a step up every time. Like, obviously that was a big jump up, but if I just keep stepping up every time, there's like just take on the next best guy, like one, you know, like who's just above me every single time. I also needed time to grow into my frame. Like, I was a welterweight throughout all my amateur career, and then when I turned pro, I just never wanted to be cutting anymore, because I just felt like I lost my pop once I got down like less than 80 kilo when I was cutting. I just felt like I lost the pop in my shots. So I just wanted to be a middleweight, and I knew that it would take time for me to grow in the middleweight and grow into my frame. So I do feel like the longer that my career goes on, the worse it's going to be for these guys, you know what I mean? And my goal is to become a Cage Warriors world champion. So I don't want to go in there and like try and like do things too quickly and like rush my career, because I do feel like timing is everything, and the only thing that'll stop me becoming a Cage Warriors world champion is trying to like get there too soon, because as I say, you can't buy the experience. But other than experience, I know that I have it all. I've only shown like 5%, 10% of what I can actually do. I know how good I am. Anyone who trains with me knows how good I am. So it's just a matter of timing, picking the right fights at the right time, and then I'll continue to give people highlight reel knockouts. Like, I'm 100% sure of it. Like, if you put anyone in there with similar experience to me, they're going to get smoked. So I continue on just smoking a couple more people, adding a couple of nice knockouts to my record, and then going for that belt. And when I do win that belt, it'll be a dream come true for me. Whenever I just came in the gym, Carl Moore was like Cage Warriors world champion at the time, then Joe McCogan, then Paul Reese, you know, like that. They're the names that I want my name to be beside. So it's my dream to become a Cage Warriors world champion and bring that belt to Pat and Shando just as like a thank you, you know what I mean? Like, they've done so much for me, and if I could just bring them that world title one day and just like bring that back to the gym, it would just be like mission accomplished. Like, this is exactly what I wanted when I got into the sport. When I seen people in the yellow gloves, like, that's why I got so emotional after I went in Cage Warriors. Whenever I was joined the gym, all the top pro guys were fighting in Cage Warriors. So I was like, fuck me, if one day I could win a fight in Cage Warriors. And then whenever I'm like training all these guys and then they're winning world titles, I'm like, I want to win a Cage Warriors world title, you know what I mean? So I was like, one box ticked was that win in Dublin, and it made me just have so much more belief in myself, because it felt like it all clicked, you know what I mean? Like, whenever I'm in the gym, whatever comes into my head, I'll just throw and just kind of flow with things. And then sometimes I go in the fights like maybe like too strict on myself. I'm like, don't do this, don't do that, wait till this point to do that, you know, like. Whereas in Dublin, I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to go in, flow with how I do in training. If a shot comes into my head, I'm going to throw it. And then it worked out perfect. So that's just how I'm going to approach every fight now. I'm just going to go in, let it flow, trust in my fight IQ, trust in my eye, and just take all these guys out.
Paddy, the Cage Warriors middleweight division it's a bit of a weird one, where it's kind of been like, not in flux, but like the belt has changed hands so many times over the last number of years. Do you have a hit list when you're looking at that division? Obviously, Mick Stanton's after being booked to defend his title in a couple of months here now. Are there any names out there that you're actively eyeing up? Are you keeping an eye on the other competitors in there?
I'm obviously keeping an eye on everyone. Like, my ideal scenario in Cage Warriors would be to fight Will Curry for the belt. Like, I think, in my opinion, Will Curry's the best in the division. I think Mick Stanton's just went on a wee course of gear in his late 30s, just for a wee resurgence of his career. And because that, combined with experience, is able like to grind out a win against Will Curry. But if I'm looking at skill sets, I think Will Curry's the best in the division. So if I was to win that belt and truly feel like a world champion and truly feel like the champion of the Cage Warriors division, I feel like it would have to be beating Will Curry. You know what I mean? If I had that belt and I hadn't beaten Will Curry yet, I wouldn't feel like the champion of the division, because in my opinion, he's the most skilled fighter in the Cage Warriors middleweight division, you know what I mean? So if I could beat this guy, Caoilte, and then, I'm not looking too far ahead of myself, but if I can beat him, have like another fight end of this year or early next year, and then fight Will Curry for the belt, that would be fucking perfect for me. Like, I would get so up for that fight. If I knew that I was fighting Will Curry for a world title, I would just be so up for that fight, because I know it would be an extremely difficult fight. I know that he is a very high level, and I believe that he would bring the best out of me. So for me to be a world champion and like the champion in this division, I feel like it would have to be beating Will Curry.
That'd be a brilliant fight. Look, two more quick questions before we let you go, Paddy. We talked about having Paul back and the impact that it has, mentally and training alongside him, etc. But he's a guy who's a champion in the organization, and he's had interactions with the UFC where he's trying to launch himself in there. From a business side and from like a career management side, has that taught you anything? Looking at how Paul's career has been unfolding the last little while, and how the UFC operate when it comes to signing guys.
Well, not really from like Paul's situation, because I do think it is completely different. Like at his weight and at middleweight, I believe that it's a lot easier to get signed whenever you're a middleweight. It's a lot less, like there's a lot less depth in this division. But in terms of the business side of things, I've learned so much from Paul. Not like his situation now in this run with signing or not signing to the UFC, but just in general, the like wee tips and the advice that he has given me has been priceless, to be honest. Like things that I would never have taken into consideration, that Paul would have like opened my eyes to and made me aware of. And he's never been shy like that. He's never held back with things that he knows. He's always trying to pass like what he's learning down to guys like me. Like whenever we went down the Cage Warriors in Dublin, the last time he was giving me a lot of advice and talking, like you would almost think he knew what was about to happen that weekend. It was crazy. But he was like giving me so much advice in the car down, just about the business side of things, because there is so much that goes on in this sport, you know what I mean? It's crazy, but I haven't really taken anything away from like his situation at the minute, because I do think it's just such a unique situation. Like I don't think that he's done anything wrong. Like some people, like there's some unbelievable fighters, but they don't have like a good social media presence, and people are like, oh, you need to be active on social media. Like Paul ticks every single box, you know what I mean? Like he goes around the world training, he's like networking with people and across the world here at the top of the sport. His performances are world class, violent performances. He doesn't go in and try and hold on to people and raid out wins. He's very active on social media. Like every box you need to tick, Paul ticks it. So there's nothing that I can really like look at his situation with not being signed at the minute and learn from. But outside of that, I've learned a lot from Paul, you know what I mean? But make no mistake, whenever Paul gets into the UFC, he's going to go on an absolute tear. Take it from me now. Like Paul could go in and fight their top 15, top 10 now and give them hell. Like that isn't by no exaggeration at all. Like Paul, I have no doubt that Paul will be a Cage Warriors World Champion. He has absolutely everything it takes, and it does take a lot. Like this sport takes so much from you, especially at this point in your career, whenever you're fighting for buttons, but you still have to put in just as much time as like people who are getting paid well, you know what I mean? So
absolutely.
There's so much sacrifices that you have to make for this sport is unbelievable, and Paul makes all them sacrifices, and it's just water off a duck's back. It doesn't seem like it affects him at all. It doesn't ever affect his hunger or his appetite for the sport. Every time you talk to him, he's just as hungry as the last time you spoke to him, and he's always switched on. Like, so I think whenever Paul hits the UFC, he is going to go through them all for a shortcut. Like I really do.
When fans tune in on Saturday night on UFC Fight Pass for Cage Warriors 161, what can they expect? What can they expect from Paul's performance and then from your own?
Well, I think Paul's going to go through this guy and really make a statement. You know what I mean? I think this guy is going to regret talking a wee bit of shit to Paul, to be honest. Like, but Paul at lightweight, Jesus Christ, man! Like he's strong as fuck. Like he is thick. Like if no matter what, if someone's in the gym and they're good, no matter what weight they are, Paul puts it on them. Like there's no one like, oh, this guy's a welterweight or he's a middleweight. Like we'll keep the like heavier guys with him, and like Paul will go in and ragdoll anyone at any weight. Like the guy is unbelievably strong. He has that culture strength. You know, all them through he has it, so he does. He has it in an abundance, and he's always had it. Now he has the skill set to match. So, fuck me, I think you're going to see a different animal of him at lightweight.
And what happens when you step inside the cage against Samir Kaddi on Saturday night?
I think I go in and set traps and take this guy away, mate. To be honest, I think this guy like thinks that he's a higher level than he is, but when he goes in there and feels my presence in the cage, I just think that I'm going to take him out for sure.
Well, look, Paddy, I really appreciate the time here today. I'm really looking forward to seeing you compete again. If your last performance is anything to go by, then fans are in for an absolute treat. And I'm sure we'll, I imagine you may have a celebration up your sleeve like you did last time.
Oh, Jesus. Another one getting put in the spliff, bro. Another one.
Well, look, all the best this week, Paddy, and we'll chat to you again soon. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, lads. Peace out.
Brilliant to hear from Paddy McCorry as always. There, always a good crack. A lad who's well fed after the interview, if we're all led to believe what was happening there. But we shall move on, guys. And Leon Hill, a late addition to the card. Andy, you had the chance to speak with him yesterday, broke the news of his new opponent. I'll send it over to you to catch that if anyone. Look, I could plug these interviews that you're doing all of the interviews. We're trying to talk to every single
Just go to SevereMMA.com when you need Irish MMA.
100%. But want to give you the shine out. You're going out there, you're doing some good work with those interviews. So you were talking to Leon yesterday. You broke the news of his new opponent, and I think it's a fantastic addition to the card as well. I was looking at it late last week and I was like, where are we going to fit Leon Hill here? It's getting tight. But Cage Warriors, Graham, Ian Dean, they always do a great job. It was at the midnight hour this fight was added in, but he has an opponent and we're going to see the professional back in there in the lightweight division.
Yeah, I mean, Leon Hill's one of these guys. We spoke to Graham Boylan, and he's talking about the developmental cycle of 2.5 years of these fighters. And when you have fighters like Reese and Paul, or well, Paul's obviously here for this one, but when Reese and Caoilte are gone to the UFC, it leaves a gap. Leon's a guy who could become one of these, these headliners for Cage Warriors and up fighting for a title. And the streak that he's on at the moment is incredible. The performance that he had out in Italy was brilliant. And he finally gets a name here. He's fighting up at welterweight. So, when I was speaking to him, he was saying, yeah, I want to go out and get a win here, but then it's straight back down to 155 to cement my, to cement my case there in that division. However, he also teased a potential move to welterweight. So I think he said one thing, and then he was saying, although, let's see, because, I feel pretty good right now. I'm not, the weight cuts are tough enough. So you never know. We could see him go out here, put on a phenomenal performance, and he might just decide, fuck that, fuck cutting weight. I'm going to stick at 170. So, fighting a guy, Ewan Davies, Welsh fighter, I believe he's 3-0, undefeated. And yeah, just great to see him on the card again. And he's one to watch, absolutely. Yeah,
brilliant. I'd be interested to see what he does decide to do, because I think with the run that he has had at lightweight, I think there's a real potential after this fight, to maybe secure maybe one or two more fights at lightweight en route to a title fight. It's weird though, because I interviewed him ahead of the Jarleen fight. I was chatting to him in the interview about this, where at that point Paul was 145-pound champion. George Harback had gone to the UFC. Mason Jones wasn't around, and so there was like a lot of empty space there to kind of fill the gap and be like, right, if I get a big win here, I could go in and get a title shot. Whereas now you've got a lot of established guys where it becomes a little bit more cluttered. So even though he's a step closer and wins to title, will that affect him? Will other fighters being around the division more affect him? So yeah, it's hard to know. Yeah, interesting times for sure. Ger Harris is going to be coming in with some high performance moves, Caoilte, to take on Ryan Hewitt. Signed I believe a 1-fight deal with Cage Warriors, but a smart signing for Cage Warriors to bring Ger Harris in. Wouldn't you agree?
Very much so. Got to get those high performance moves in. You got to get a personality like Ger Harris as well. That is like, he's kind of must see whenever he gets on the mic, really, isn't he? And he's exciting in the cage as well. And he always delivers. Don't know much about the opponent really, but just excited to see Jerry. He's very active at the moment, so fantastic opportunity for him to fight in Dublin. I know he's just they're all out in Portugal at Shinobi Academy at the moment, so I think he's finishing up his camp out there and then back to Dublin to fight.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm sure there'll be a couple of good stories from the sunshine out in Portugal there when Andy visits. We were talking when Andy visits. We're recording this and Andy has plans ahead, but by the time you're listening to this, it will be all said and done, fingers crossed. So we're kind of giving away the time scale on when we're recording this now. But brilliant. I'm delighted to see Ger on that, and I'm excited to see him compete inside Cage Warriors. Before we move over and speak with Solomon Simon about his fight, just a note. Sadly, Alexander O'Sullivan is off this card. His fight is off. He did not pass the medical. He was hurt in camp right at the final hurdle there before the fight. So that will be disappointing for him. Obviously, we were hoping to speak with him today. And for obvious reasons, with the fight pullout, we're not going to be able to do that. So we wish him a speedy recovery. Sorry not to see him on the card. Obviously, I fancy him as a top Irish prospect or most prestigious amateur fighter that's come through. And hopefully we'll get to see him on an upcoming Cage Warriors card down the line when he does eventually recover. But that brings us to Solomon Simon from Team Rhino Waterford. Coming in to, I mean, Caoilte, you absolutely nailed this in the interview. He's taken on Marco Sarajarvi in the featherweight division. I don't know whether I butchered that, but you know me now. If you've been listening to the Auld Triangle for all of this time, through 42 episodes, you know that I'm guaranteed to butcher at least one name each podcast. Let's head on over to Caoilte. He's going to talk to Solomon about that fight and a couple of others.
And now we welcome to the show Solomon Simon ahead of his bout at Cage Warriors 161. Solomon, what's the crack?
How are you getting on? Feels good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. The what's a typical Sunday looking like down in the sunny southeast?
Feel good. Like it's not as sunny today, but it was sunny earlier on. So like got a bit of bag work in and just chilling now. Like starting to cut down the carbs and stuff. So the wake up process has started. So slightly hungry.
Worst part of the whole camp is all that. But
yeah.
You've been doing a bit of training down in I guess you've been training Team Rhino Waterford, moving up around to Dublin as well. What's the camp been like? How have you been mixing things up for this one?
Been good. Like I'm in Dublin a good bit, and then I head back to Waterford a bit now because I got a job in Dublin recently. Just had to go back full time. Like and then so I'm working in Dublin as well. So I get a good few sessions in with Andy in Redza and all them up in HQ, and then I head back to Waterford then midway during the week and get working with Bobby and Gaz and my team down there as well. So it's been good. The whole camp is solid, really. Like it's nice to have both. Get a bit more one-to-one time when I head back down, and then obviously I have solid team up in HQ as well to push me at that a high pace kind of thing. So I have like the best of both worlds, I feel like.
Is that have you moved to Dublin full time now, or are you just commuting up and down?
No, I've basically moved. I've moved. Yeah, I would say I've moved. See, I don't want to say I've moved because I'm still associating myself to Waterford, but like. Technically, I'm in Dublin, like, basically every day of the week. Like, I'm in Waterford a couple of days during the week now. So I'm in Dublin more than I'm in Waterford now.
You don't want them to claim you as a dub yet?
Don't worry, come over to the dark side, Solomon. It's great. Yeah, it's way nicer up here. You know, I mean,
you're being outnumbered here, Andy. You're three culchies on here now. Myself and Caoilte and Solomon as well. We're not going to let Solomon get dragged over.
I'd never refer to you as culchies or boggers. So that those are your words. Solomon,
Go ahead, Andy.
No, I was just going to ask about just before we start fighting about the job. You told me that is it biochemistry you were studying? Is it a job in a lab, or what type of job is it?
Yeah, so I studied biotechnology in DCU. So I was in Sanofi at that time when we did the last interview in Waterford. But I was like I said, I was able to get away with doing a couple of days and then coming back up to Dublin. Now I just moved in. I'm in Pfizer up in Dublin now. So like I'm there full time, but there's a bit of flexibility with the working time, so I could get a bit more time working from home. So I'm not in the labs anymore, like so I don't have to go in physically all the time, which allows for a lot more training to get done, and then it obviously balances out financially as well. So I don't have to stress as much on that part. But yeah, it was biotech was what I was doing.
But the decision to, pursue a job right now or pursue your education, we actually spoke with Conor McCarthy, who has gone down the same path. And, it's very admirable and a smart move, in my opinion, as well. Although, look, some people choose not to do that too, and that's their own decision. What was your decision to kind of want to get that education, want to kind of work and kind of balance your professional mixed martial arts career as well?
I think it gives me a lot more peace, being honest. It makes me feel like I'm doing this because I want to do it and I love what I'm doing and I'm enjoying it, rather than feeling like if I don't make this or if I don't do this, I'm screwed and whatever. And I hear something sometimes about people say, oh, like you shouldn't spread your eggs in too many baskets or whatever it is, and you should only focus on one or you're going to end up failing on it. And I'm like, listen, either way, if I do this, maybe I have 10 solid years in the pro side of things. What am I going to do after that then as well? So need to have options no matter what down the line. But I think getting the degree, I know I have that in the back pocket. Like I have solid experience working in the pharma industry now, so I know I have that in the back pocket. So and I'm like at I felt like I've been able to juggle both fairly well so far. Like, so I'm not like, I wouldn't tell anyone not to do it, because I just think for me anyway, it just gives me a lot more peace. Like, I know even if things doesn't work out, I know there's still something there no matter what. So then I could actually focus on enjoying it and making it work. That way, it works when I'm enjoying it, not when I'm stressed and I'm saying, if I don't do this right, I'm going to mess this up, or my whole life is screwed. But I feel like I'm going to be okay no matter what.
Yeah, for sure. It's a very smart decision. I mean, obviously, early stages of your professional career and obviously amateur, you're not getting paid. It's hard to make ends meet. So I know it's a very smart decision to make, to try and balance it, although being difficult as well. So would you be kind of having a mindset, Solomon, you know, maybe if you do progress with Cage Warriors and get to where you want to get to, and maybe you do start earning the money that you can see yourself through on a day-to-day basis from MMA, that would be when you kind of put your job on the back burner. But you always have that in your back pocket. You always have that security, as you said, because you never know in this game, man. You could get hurt at any moment, you know, and it might be all over in an instant. So I think it's a very smart move. Is that what, you know, would the plan be if you get to where you want to get to, you can put that in the back burner, and then, you know, you'll always have that after the fact when your career is finished?
Exactly, yeah. Like, because as I'm going now, like, we'll see what the next 2 years have to bring. You know what I mean? Like, now, just gonna build the experience I have now and like just compete and try to get to the level like I know I'm gonna get to. And then once I'm there, I feel like, okay, listen, I don't need this anymore, or so I could like put more time in. And funny enough, like the job actually gives me a decent bit of structure. It is stressful, I know, like it is stressful trying to like, because it's a full-time job and then training is full-time as well. So I'm trying to like, but it forces me to be like, okay, I need to get my sessions in at this time, go to work, get the rest of the session in at this time. So it gives me a good routine, so, and keeps me focused in that sense. But for sure, once things pick up where, as I know they will in a couple of years, then I know, okay, listen, I'm ready to like go full on into that. And then whenever that time comes, I might go back to what I'm doing now, or I might just find a new path wherever life takes me, you know.
100%.
You mentioned the experience there and like building the experience, but you've had so much, I guess, from the amateur ranks and now early pro. You're come to your third fight in the space of a year, kind of continuing on that level of activity from an amateur. In terms of Cage Warriors coming around then and signing with them, I guess, how important was it, and how ready did you feel when they came knocking to sign with Cage Warriors and pursue your career with them?
Remember, like after the debut in January, like my original thought process was like, I just want to get on the regional shows, like all this year really, like as in if I could get like 3-4 fights this year on the regional shows, and then start looking at Cage Warriors. And like Cage Warriors was definitely the vision, like that's the path I wanted to go down. And once I got that, and then when the opportunity came up in April for that fight, I was just like, fuck it, like I can't, like it's like I can't say no to that. So it went down, that went well. And then in the middle of the summer as well, I was trying to squeeze something else in there. Like there was an option with Cage Warriors. I was like, that was like cutting a bit close to the last one. And there was just a few things that was like getting mixed up. But once the contract came in, and like I was just like, you know what, like I have to believe, because what I was looking, the reason I was like saying I want to get on the regional shows more and more was to again get more experience. But then when I go back and look at what I've done, I've like competed a lot. Like if it's on the MMA side, did a good few years with the kickboxing, did a couple of boxing fights as well. So I have a lot of experience under my belt, and I just have to believe in that like it's there now. I don't obviously I will forever be learning, but like use that to actually build myself. You know what, I'm actually at this level now, so there's no need for me like sort of tiptoeing around again. So now I just like, fuck it, sign the contract, and then I'm gonna get through this year. If I could squeeze 2 more in, and if I get this one, another one, I'll be happy. But I'll be happy with if I finish up with this, and then next year, that's where I'm like going after all the big boys. Then say like, okay, who's there? Like, and then try and make my name, because all I'm trying to do is test myself. Like, so whatever way it works out, it works out. But I'm going out there against whoever they put in front of me. I'm just gonna try to take them out.
Making your debut in the 3 arenas, well, not debut, your Cage Warriors debut, but your second pro fight in 3 arenas, something not many people can really say, and it's such a kind of historic venue in Ireland. What was that experience like, just walking out in front of the big crowd in such a huge stadium so early in your pro career?
Yeah, like that's where the experience back in the army days I sort of like paid to me because I felt so calm, like I felt so at peace. And I remember like before I walked out, like just as they were like calling out the names, I looked back at Andy, Bobby, and like Gaz, and I was just smiling. And Andy came back to me. I'm like, focus, focus, focus. I was like, nah, I'm good, I'm good. like it's just because I just felt like so at peace in there. Like there was obviously you're going out there to fight a man. You're gonna be nervous, like, but it just felt like okay. I felt like I belonged there. I didn't feel like overwhelmed by so much of it. And as I was walking out, looking at the crowd, seeing my brother, seeing my mom, seeing my girlfriend, I was like, you know what, like fuck it. And then the closer I got to the cage, everything else just like started blanking out, and it was just like, okay, let's get to work then. And I felt good in there. I felt good. I felt very calm, which I feel like I'm always calm, but it felt so much. I felt a lot more present, and that's what I'm chasing all the time. I just want to get to a point where like I'm in a flow state in there and I could control that, just let everything go without stressing as much. And the 3 arenas, surprisingly to even myself, I felt like at peace. I felt good. Like, so yeah, it was great.
To compete in front of, I guess, your family, friends in such a momentous occasion for yourself, and then get to finish in front of them. What did that mean to you, and kind of to bring joy to everyone that came to support you?
Proud. Like I felt proud of myself, proud of the work I've put in up until that point. And then I just felt proud to be able to give that to all the people that support me, and like knowing that, like, because even if I'm looking at Bobby and that, like, because Bobby and Gaz, they've been there from time, like, you know what I mean? So and Bobby's been putting in, and Gaz as well, they've been putting in countless hours traveling to random shows up north and going here, and like, and then obviously they have a family as well to look after and to care for and things. So I've been taking their family time away, if I look at it that way. And I just felt proud to be able to give back to all those people and be like, you know what, like we are doing what we said we're going to do. We're on the right path towards that. So now I was definitely very proud of myself for getting that done. And then extremely proud of myself for being able to actually give that joy to other people as well. The people that supported me from day one, and like they're still there with me now, my core group. I'm like, thank you for being here till now, and like we're just getting started.
Solomon, the performance itself against Dorian Kalashnikov, for me, it was the best I've ever seen from you, and particularly your striking. Like, it looked really crisp, really fast. The leg kicks were doing really well for you. Like, when you looked at that performance, like, would you agree with that? Was that the best performance of your career to date?
I would agree with that for sure. Like, because I've been trying. Like, the thing is, like when it comes like striking, wrestling, grappling, jits, all of that. Like, I have all of that there. Like, I feel very, especially like when I'm in the gym, I know who I'm rolling with, I know who I'm moving with, and I know how good they are. So, and I feel very good with all that. But translating that into the cage has always been like, just it's rather sometimes I'm like trying for perfection a bit too much, and then that just ends up holding me back a bit. I remember the Mario fight just before I went pro. The Mario fight, a lot of that I was just a little bit too like trying to wait for the perfect shot to happen, and then I don't get anything done then. But that last fight, I felt very good in the sense of I was able to flow a little bit more, still be able to stay tight with my guard, maintain the distance at the right range. I still would have liked to up the volume a bit, and that's again layers we're going to be adding onto it. But for sure, I feel like that was my best performance to date for myself. And when I come out and I start watching it, and I'm here criticizing this, and I get pissed off at myself at little things, but I felt very happy with that. Obviously, like I've already seen so many shit in there that I'll be like, okay, don't do that. Like, even the fact that he hit me pissed me off enough to be like, I don't want to get hit at all. But that's like, okay, like it's gonna happen in a fight. So I'm accepting a lot more. I think accepting I'm gonna get hit is something that it sounds weird, like going into a fight, but like, of course you're gonna get. Well, I don't like getting hit. Not in a I can't take a shot or whatever, but I just in my head I'm like, oh, the aim of the game is to get hit, is to hit and not get hit. So I should not. If I'm getting hit at all, I'm losing. And then that thought starts going into my head, and then I'm on the back. I'm too busy thinking rather than being present and letting my shit go. So that last fight, I felt like I let everything else, and I was just right there and just went with whatever came at me, and it was good. So now I see what that is, and I'm trying to keep that process in my head and bring it on to this next fight and just add an extra layer to it again.
Solomon, for yourself, what have you found the biggest transition from moving to amateur into professionals? Obviously, the longer rounds, the use of elbows and stuff like that. Is there anything else in terms of preparation or what you had to do to kind of maybe adjust over to the professional ranks?
I don't think things changed significantly. I think the awareness of the danger might have gone up a bit more. And that gives you a different level of focus again, knowing obviously the smaller gloves, you have the elbows, you have the knees to the head, those little things, and those are very dangerous shots. Those are very dangerous things that is added in. I think that brings you, you realize, there's no padding with this, or there's obviously even the 7-ounce gloves are still fairly small anyway, but there's a different level of danger. So that, for me anyway, it brings back a different level of focus in my head that there's really not many room for error. But when it comes to preparations going in, obviously, trying to work on the elbows, work on the knees, avoid positions that you would normally, I try not to, but positions where you could put yourself in danger. Now you have to be a lot more aware of those positions. But when it comes to the work rate and things like that, it hasn't changed drastically, if I'll be honest with you. It's just there's more of every time I go up to HQ, it's usually 5-minute rounds anyway. So being used to that from time. In Waterford, we've upped it for 5, even for the Army lads now as well. They're getting pissed off at me. They're saying it's my fault that they have to do 5-minute rounds now. But it's ups the level anyway. And that preparation work is, I don't think it's changed significantly, but the biggest thing I would have noticed for myself would be the awareness of danger has gone up a lot more. And that brings a different level of focus. And obviously, just been training as hard as I always would. And I will keep adding layers to it. Every single camp, I'm okay, what more can I do? Not overburn myself, but at the same time, just push that a little bit more to be if it's extra drilling or extra condition or whatever it may be. But I think that for me anyway, the biggest thing would be the awareness of danger has gone up.
The upcoming fight at Cage Warriors is up against the Finnish guy Marko Sarasjärvi. He's actually, have you come across him before? Because I remember the IMMAFs. I think the two of you were at about 3 competitions, different sides of the bracket. But would you come across him before? And have you actually seen him before even this match got booked?
I actually didn't, but I know it was in the IMMAFs and it did fairly well a few times there. I went back and got the IMMAF TV then and just watched all of his bouts back then, and then a few of his pro fights as well. You see, I like the way you actually said the second name there, because I've given up. I just say Marco most of the time. I'm Marco. I don't even try to say the second name. But,
you're like us all the time. We struggle with names all the time.
But yeah, no, I never came across him, but obviously now I've watched a good bit of his stuff and things like that. But he wasn't because I remember one of his fight against Salamat, and I remember watching Salamat for a while, and I was I like that guy. He's very good. I was open to have met him at some point in the IMMAF, but look, never worked there. But yeah, I've seen a few of his stuff now, but I never met him in the IMMAF, no.
From what I've seen from Marco, he's his grappling, and I guess that entire team that he's with, they're very good grapplers, very slick on the ground. Is there something there that you've looked at and thought that you can have the advantage of heading into this one?
His grappling would be his biggest strength from what I've seen. Striking is decent. Obviously, everyone now is good anyway, so I can't say there's a massive weakness here or whatever, but I'll definitely say I have the advantage when it comes to the feet and the wrestling. And if I'm on top of him, I don't care how good his grappling is. If I'm on top of you, I will hurt you, and you're not going to be able to move me that easily. But the main thing I was seeing trying to do is get it to the ground. His back takes are good, his chokes are good and things, so I know where his strength lies, and I've prepare for that accordingly. And again, I know it's all good, but I move with black belts in HQ. I move with brown belts. I've moved with purple belt. I know what the levels. I even want to go to the competitions as well. Like the last grapple industry, I jumped into the black belt division just to see what's up in that place. Like, so grappling wise, I feel very comfortable. Wrestling, I feel very comfortable. Striking, I feel very comfortable. And that's what I'm trying to build myself at. I want to be, if I'm in a video game, I just want to like max out all my stats. And that's literally all I'm going at. Like, I'm like, I don't want to a point whereby, oh, like we're going to take him down. That's how we're going to get him. Or we're going to stand with him. That's how we're going to get him. I wanted to a point they would look at me and be like, shit, we don't know what to do with this guy. And then like, yeah, fuck it, we're in a fight now. Let's go. And that's all it is. I know where his strength lies, and I'm aware of it, but I'm not terrified of it.
So we kept for 20 minutes, but just one last thing ahead of the event in the RDS Arena. What's the feel like? How excited are you to compete for Cage Warriors for a second time in front of the RDS? And maybe do you have a prediction for us as well?
Never been in the RDS. I think my girl, she watches rugby a bit, and I think that's Leinster home ground, is it? Am I right with that?
Yeah, it is.
Sure. Yeah. So that would make her very happy. So that's already a plus. I'll take that there. But the overall, that's why I'm going out there from as soon as the bell goes, just get him on the back foot. And I'm just going to keep hitting him until he does what his instinct is going to tell him to do, which is shoot at me. And if it's not walking into a knee, he'll be walking into something else, and then that's it. But my aim is to continue that finishing streak and not let this get to the judges again. Because I've lost too many split decisions back in the Army days, and I'm excited of things.
Perfect. Solomon, thank you so much for joining us. You can, for those watching or listening, you can watch Solomon's fight at the RDS Arena, Cage Warriors 161 on the 14th of October. Thank you very much, Solomon, and we'll catch you again soon.
All right, lads, let's discuss the regional scene in Irish mixed martial arts. It's been a busy couple of weeks there as well. We'll run through the Cage Legacy card first. We'll have a little look at Clan Wars, which also took place last weekend as well, or the weekend before. Cage Legacy, another good show as well. Max Lally at the top of the card, taking on Jonathan Fernard, and picked up a very, very impressive first round knockout as well. Look at the opponent here was not at the same level as Max Lally, and that's I think that's fair for all of us to say here. I had a chat with Paul Fogarty about it, and not that I was tackling him over that. I mean, we've seen this, and this exists in early stages of professional mixed martial arts. But Paul actually brought up a good point in that, the opponent is game. Obviously, he's coming over with nothing to lose, and you have to combat that. But this being Max's first professional fight, he's headlining the card. There's a lot of people coming up and showing up to watch him fight. I think I spoke with him ahead of the fight. He had at that stage around 150, nearly 200 tickets sold. So, when you accumulate the opponent, the occasion, selling tickets, and wrapping all of that things up, it can add a little bit of pressure too. But Max went out there and passed everything with flying colours and put on a great performance, showcased some improvements on the feet, and caught a sweet left hook upon finishing Jonathan Fernard. I'll head over to you first, Andy, for your thoughts on that. Would it be a fair assessment what I kind of led you into to kind of the overall assessment of Max's first professional fight? Because, we spoke very highly of Max. We know what he's capable of. He passed this one with flying colours, but we're going to have to try and develop him in the right way and get him some maybe sterner tests further along his professional career, obviously enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was expecting Max to go in here and get a finish and probably a relatively quick one here. I thought he was going to be coming in and outmatching his opponent. But look, as kind of Paul, I think it was Paul Brown or Shauna said on commentary, when you have a guy like that, they're kind of a little bit unorthodox and don't, when they're not as technically sound, they kind of just throw a bit weirdly. And that's kind of what happened. Max got cracked a couple of times in this one. Yeah. Now, as soon as he was able to kind of, take a beat and compose himself and find his rhythm, then it was fairly light work in the end. Caught a lovely left hook and put him away. But yeah, look, it's his first fight as a pro. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what's next. Look, I rate Max so highly. I think he's a bright future in the sport. So I'm sure we will be seeing him face tougher competition in the near future. But yeah, job done here.
Absolutely, yeah. We're talking a lot about top prospects, Caoilte, but Max is on top of the heap when it comes to top prospects in the professional ranks, and one that we're very looking forward to seeing the progression. I think the shoe fits with him and developing his early professional career with Cage Legacy there. They can put on some good shows, they can give him some stern tests, and that's what we want to see from Max Lally, really, isn't it?
It really is. It's similar up to how Shauna kind of developed Cage Legacy as well, having, was it 2 or 3 fights there? And I could see Max doing this similar thing. And Cage Legacy, in fairness, like other promotions around, they're willing to fly people over from other countries, like they've done for his debut, just to get them some competition that they may not get regionally. So yeah, it fits perfectly. He'll get to sell a lot of tickets and hopefully make a few quid out of it as well. If you sell that many tickets, he should be getting a certain percent, I imagine he is. And yeah, it's ideal. So look, brilliant to see him compete in Ireland. I don't think we'll have a chance to there in a few fights' time, so we might as well make the most of it while we can.
100%. We were, myself and Max, we were calling upon Declan Kenny in our interview to stump up that money, give him some of that tickets percentage of sales, sold a bundle of tickets there. So hopefully we'll have to follow up on that one, Declan, if you're listening, with Max. And I'm going to send it over to you, Andy, just to talk us through Gary Rooney's win over Murray Georgie, a second round submission, a wild fight, lots of exchanges on the feet, and obviously lots of good transitions in the grappling department as well, and a submission win for Gary Rooney. They kind of go hand in hand now at this stage, don't they?
Yeah, this was a great fight. I really enjoyed it. Taking on a guy, Murray George, who I've watched Murray George fight, and he's a solid fighter. And he came to fight here. He was thrown in abundance against Rooney, and he caught him in a choke up against the cage at one point that looked very tight. Gary in the post-fight interview was kind of saying how they call that choke the Franatine after Franz Mlambo in the gym, because that's his bread and butter, so he's well used to defending it. So
Franz wouldn't pull a guillotine though, would he?
No, never. But yeah, look, I thought it was a really a good litmus test for Gary in his pro debut. One that he passed, one that he looked good, and he dropped Murray George at one point in the fight with a crisp shot, and then ultimately locks in the armbar, went for the triangle and then the armbar finish. So a really solid night. A guy who commands a big fan base as well. There was chants of Yup the Flats and Rooney bellowing throughout the Kilnamana venue. So look, a solid win for Gary Rooney.
Yeah, and George, look, he'll be back. I mean, that's a difficult opponent on his professional debut, Caoilte, but he's a good fighter and one that's definitely going to pick up a couple of wins as well.
Yeah, like he's not really had it easy in his pro career, has Muraru. Like, he's had there's been, I guess, controversy or something happening in each of his pro fights to date. So I think Paul Brown mentioned on the commentary that Muraru could have been 1-2-0 already, but before this fight. But fantastic fight. But what are you going to say, Andy?
No, it was just when you said the contrary, because it was a headbutt or something in the previous one against Pereira, where a point was taken and then it ended up being a draw.
Yeah, it was. I think it was a headbutt. It was one of them anyway. But he's not had it really easy, has he? But game opponent, his record does not speak for his skill set whatsoever. A fantastic fighter, and look forward to seeing him compete again. Gary Rooney did well in that fight as well. Looked like he had rocks in his hand at one point when he dropped him with that. Was it check left hook and a right hand on the back of it? It was just unreal. So lovely fight. Two great fighters, and scene's booming.
I'll stick with you, Caoilte, for the fight between Brian Manning and Senan Coakley. Lots and lots of talk ahead of this fight. Lots of over and back. No love lost, as they say, between these two gentlemen. And who went in there and they put on a fantastic display of mixed martial arts. Very exciting grappling exchanges and striking exchanges as well. Both guys landing some big shots, and it really was a grueling fight, with Brian Manning ultimately taking the unanimous decision and the title in the process.
Yeah, like there is so much back and forth before this fight, and in amateur fights we don't tend to see this like build up and shit talk to a certain extent, but there was so much of it in this, and it really built it up, and got everyone excited for this, and it really added a bit of tension to the fight. The two of them left it all in there. Like by the end of it, you could see the two of them were shattered, and it was really entertaining from start to finish. Thought the relentless pressure from Brian Manning really made the difference for getting the fight to the ground and kind of grinding out a victory there, and kind of negating Senan's striking, which we all know is just so slick. And if you leave him get his distance, he'll punish you, and he almost did on a few occasions. But we also saw Senan do very well off his back, defending, getting back to his feet on occasion. But and then on the other hand, Manning did very well in the feet, cracked him once or twice, I believe. I think it was second round. But overall, it was just fantastic. The cage looked a little bit slippy at times as well, which probably didn't help. Overall, unreal fight. I loved it. Fair play to both of them. Left it all in there.
Brilliant stuff. Like Quill just said, Andy, Senan obviously a slick striker, Brian Manning wanting to close the distance in this fight, a very smart game plan from Brian. With Senan, a good learning curve for him. Look, it did look dangerous, threw up a couple of arm bars on his back, but a guy with his striking caliber, fights like these are going to help develop and grow his game overall as well. Similar enough to Brian, who wants to implement his game plan. But a guy like Senan will come off, he'll be disappointed with that, but ultimately this is what we put these fights together for. We want to put guys in against tough challenges, counter kind of different styles a little bit, and that's how you'll kind of well round your game up. And I'm sure that's what we'll see Senan Coakley do. And bright future for Senan, even if he didn't get the nod in this one.
This is Irish amateur MMA at its finest, in my opinion. You're supposed to have these tough tests. You're supposed to be put in awkward spots. And additionally, when you hear of people kind of waxing lyrical about the oldies, like yourself, you'd be well aware, Ian, it was these type of fights that generated a bit of fucking venom between gyms and between camps and stuff like that. It just made people care. It made, the world's not watching, but the people within the community are and are excited for it. And I thought that both lads did a great job of kind of building this one, even though it's only an amateur, not only an amateur fight, but even though it's not. This isn't a world title fight in a professional arena with hundreds and thousands of fans coming to it. But it was great crack, and I thought both lads gave it absolute socks. And I thought it was close. I thought every single round was close, to be honest with you. I thought, coming in here, you expected Manning to be doing grappling. Senan Coakley, Manning was putting the pressure on, but Senan Coakley was the one throwing up the submissions. And then in the second round, Manning was cracking him with some nice shots on the feet. So it had a bit of everything for everyone. And it seemed that Craig Coakley wasn't too happy with it after the fight either. I saw kind of John at Brian Manning saying, why didn't you strike more? But look, this is what makes it fun for people like us to watch it on from a distance. Absolutely. Look at Reno Flaherty and Jack Newman. They were competing in the fight. Before that, it was a really grueling over and back fight too, Andy, between these two, with Reno Flaherty taking the unanimous decision. I wouldn't argue too much over the decision over and back, but I think Reno Flaherty did the best work throughout that fight, and I'm sure you would agree with that as well, with that performance and that win. Yeah, it was a grinding fight. Both lads having success at times, but it was a hard fought win. I thought Newman did great work as well, and Flaherty put some great pressure on. But a solid fight. Yeah,
Quilcha, moving over to Ryan Keogh, who took out Vladimir Stanka via first round submission. Really good performance here. Became, I believe, the double champ in Cage Legacy, and announced that he wants to turn pro after the fight too. I think all signs do lead to him making the move to professionals, the professional ranks after a win like that. A good tough guy in Vladimir Stanka, to take him out via submission is no easy feat.
No, not at all. Ryan Keogh so slick on the mat. I think we've seen it. I think he's 7 submissions in his career now. Two-way champ, makes sense that he's going pro if that's what he feels is next, and I'm not surprised whatsoever. To get that submission, he was very calm when he had Stank. Stank is so active, and he remained calm, managed to get the submission. And then what I found really good is when it looked like they were going back up to the feet. To me, it looked like Stank, maybe not he was going back to the feet. I feel like he was going in for the legs to get a takedown, but Ryan instantly just got the. He got the. Was it? Oh my God, I'm not forgetting.
Jumped the guillotine, didn't he?
Jumped the guillotine, and then
yeah.
Caught the neck straight away and got the sub. That's
absolutely
clinical.
After watching about 700 before.
It was clinical though, wasn't it?
It was.
You could tell Stanko was kicking himself after it. He was like,
but it's the type of performance, lads, that you'd expect to hear him talking about going professional after. It's like, you know, you see a win like that with Ryan, and he's got some good wins over at IMMAF level and through the regional scene here as well. And sometimes you see guys fight and you're like, and women fight as well, where you're thinking like, yeah, I think now is the right time. And that's the kind of feeling I got before. It'll be interesting to see whether his coaches and his team agree with him and with us, and it'll be very exciting future if Ryan does eventually make the jump over to the pro ranks. Another two exciting guys in the amateur, and a very close fight between Flubber Fares and Akeem Kinsella took place as well. I know Dan Hardy was on eyes on this. He was on Pete's podcast saying that, you know, he was looking forward and eyeing up these two guys. I think someone told him after the fact that they were actually fighting again. So they were well on, the skills were well on show in this fight too, Caoilte. Fantastic over and back, with Flubber Fares taking a split decision win.
Yeah, it was fantastic back and forth. Real kind of display of striking and everything you kind of want in a fight, actually. And Kinsella did really well. He actually almost got a guillotine. I think it was twice. Looked tight enough. But landed a high kick as well in that round. It was really good. Noticed that I think maybe both of them, or could have been just Kinsella, they're using the shoulder strikes at times. Seems to be a new thing that's been, well, not new. It's common enough we're seeing nowadays, and it's brilliant. Yeah, look, back and forth in terms of striking. Very, very close fight. Really enjoyable. High-paced, as you'd expect. Some great footwork and head movement from both is the one thing I really took notice of in that one. And yeah, future's really bright. These young lads coming through are lethal.
Crazy. Like with Akeem Kinsella, I think this is his fourth or fifth amateur fight, and the level that he's showing at this early stage is crazy. And the same can be said, Andy, about Flubber Fares. Look, we got a first-hand look at him at the Nationals earlier on this year, and you know, he looked really good there and is developing his skills in the correct way. And this is a big win for him too. And both of these guys have a bright future.
Yeah, he's been active as well. Like he's taken his losses and he seems to have learned from them, and he's always in exciting fights. And yeah, like I always enjoy a Flubber Fares fight. I never know which way it's going to go, but I always enjoy it. And he's, yeah, fair play to him. 100%.
Speaking of bright futures, Caoilte Sullivan picked up a unanimous decision win over Ava Cruz in a rematch that, you know, both of those women competed against each other at the IMMAFs, and this was another really close fight as well, similar enough to the first one. I mean, first round, I thought Ava closed the distance well. A crazy striking exchange at the start of the fight. Ava closed the distance and kind of showcased what her game plan was going to be throughout the fight. Early stages, Caoilte in round one, closing the distance, trying to take the fight down. Ended up getting caught in an armbar towards and kind of stayed in that position for the majority of the first round. And I mean, I would kind of put the spotlight on that sequence there, which was the winning and the losing of the fight for me. Obviously, Kaya came back in and did well in round two. She's very, very dangerous off her back and always staying active, which is very important. And round three, Ava looking to close the distance again, getting the fight down and dominating, landing some good shots to finish out the fight. But razor close fight. I agree with the judges giving it to Caoilte Sullivan. I would have given it to her myself 2-1. But a fantastic showcase of mixed martial arts by both Kaya and by Ava as well. I'm sure you would agree, Caoilte.
Completely. I was looking forward to this one as soon as it was announced. You know, rematch from the 2021 IMMAF Worlds. Two of them, never in a boring fight. It's like the last one, but back and forth constantly. They both had their moments. You know, Ava Cruz fantastic with the rest and relentless trying to get that takedown. Single leg, really wanted to get the fight down and was successful. Kaya, as you mentioned about the armbar, really. You know, she was probably just too close up against the cage to really get the opportunity to finish that at times. But yeah, look, brilliant. The striking exchanges were back and forth. It was a bit of a firefight at the start of round two, I must admit, as well. And then round three, they left it all in there. And, you know, I thought it was brilliant. I think, yeah, I'd love to see it run back for a third. You know, you could put a title on the line eventually, run it back for a third. I wouldn't say no to it. But brilliant fight overall. Great to see Caoilte Sullivan back after so long as well.
100%, yeah, couldn't agree more. Just a quick run through for the rest of the fights on the card. Paddy McCorry defeated Darren O'Brien via unanimous decision. I was cracking up watching this fight. Nahum Weddy was on the comms here, and he kept calling Paddy McCorry Paddy Doran. Paul had to try and correct him a couple of times. It was brilliant. He finally got it. No, he finally got it, I think, towards the later stages of round one. But look, an easy mistake. I'm not one to talk about getting names wrong. Anyway, I butcher names all the time. But yeah, I just thought that was very funny. But a good win there for Paddy Moran against Darren O'Brien, like I said. Two fantastic Auld Triangle choke submissions kicked us off in the team fights on the card. Alex Keogh defeated Evan Horgan by submission in round one. I believe that he threw himself into a flying Auld Triangle there and ultimately got the finish. And Sasha Raquez took
I love how you say a flying L triangle.
I can't say a triangle anymore without putting an owl in front of it. It's ingrained into my mind. Sasha Raquez, yeah, absolutely, picked up a good win over Adam Murphy by submission as well to kick off the card as well. Another successful card for Cage Legacy. Fantastic fights on it. A very entertaining main event and undercard as well. Two things though, we got to call it as it is. The sound wasn't great for the stream. I'd really hope that they would be able to kind of get that right with the crew. Obviously, we deal with sound, we understand and empathize with sound, but when we are charging for pay-per-view fees, we want to get a decent enough product, and the sound was a little bit all over the place, a little bit of an echo at times, which doesn't help Shauna or Paul in the booth when you're trying to counteract against those issues as well. But look, it's easy for us to say, but it's something that I watched, and I'm sure you guys were the same watching as well. It's kind of doesn't make for the best viewing experience when sound issues are happening, and hopefully they can get that right too. I also heard that unfortunate event that a couple of fans did get turned away as the venue was oversold. And that's never ideal. I heard a couple of people that were a little bit disappointed to be turned away from the event. And obviously, we hope that those refunds happened and we don't have to kind of deal with that. That would be kind of a little bit of a bruise on the event per se. But look, not to shit all over Cage Legacy, they do a fantastic job, but we want to highlight the good things and the bad things. And we're looking forward to their next shows that they have announced. Declan is talking about a show later on this year, kind of an amateur show, and then on again next year for another pay-per-view showing. Caoilte, I'm going to send it over to you just to give us the quick 1-2 over Clan Wars. We've seen Jordan Fury Black in action with another tremendous performance and tremendous win against Roger Lopez. Talk us through that fight a little bit and just take us through some of the standout performances on that card itself.
Yeah, I think the main thing to highlight with Jordan Fury is the finish. It was vicious. He was in that half guard and he was just chipping away to the body, posted up, and then just landed massive shots that ground and pound and got the finish. He's we've spoken so many times about the power in those hands, and we've seen it there. I think he put him out cold. It was vicious, and he moves to 2-0 as a pro against a very decent opponent as well. So he's on the rise. Very excited to see what happens with him next. Some really good matchups that can be made for him. So and then the rest of the card, Stephen Cunningham got a win over Peter Halpenny, split decision, close fight. And the Kellys, man, they're everywhere. Dara Kelly's on Bellator. He's obviously fought in Clan Wars before, and now his brother is winning fights. Pretty sure his brother is. Ryan Kelly's win against Aaron Boyle, he got a decision, I think, as well. So there's another one. The Kellys are taking over Irish MMA, lads. Further down, then there was a win for Jamie McGarty, who beat Keane Tate in submission in the first round. Jamie Diaz beat Ben McGinn with the unanimous decision. Con Fagan, submission, first round against Mickey Mills, and then Mike McBride beat Conor Carney with TKO in the second round.
100%. Thanks for that roundup. A couple of other housekeeping things as well. Anthony Pettis FC is going down on October 20th. Andy, take us through that card. We have Owen Sherrow and a couple of other standout performers on that card traveling over from Ireland to compete. That's in Manchester, I believe.
It is. It's in Manchester.
Yeah. Take us through that card, Andy.
It's in the BEC Arena. You'll remember, I think, was it that arena, Cage Warriors, when it was at the final hour, they had to switch an event right when COVID hit from London to Manchester. So it's in that arena, I believe. So Matisse Zaharovs is back in action. So he's taking on Leandro Lima in a bantamweight bout towards the top of the card. So Matisse he fought in Clan Wars not too long ago, I believe. So he hadn't fought in a bit in a about probably 18 months he returned, and now he's back in action again. APFC putting a real kind of spotlight on Irish MMA. They seem to be really targeting Irish fighters. So we have Alex Budoy taking on Jack Axworthy, also in a pro fight. Owen Sheridan, the Sheriff, is fighting at 170. So you remember he had a brilliant kind of highlight reel finish, or a highlight reel performance, really. Only last month, I think it was. He's taking on Jonathan Mills here at 170. Jake Nye on the amateur side of the house is taking on Conor McKay in a flyweight fight. Keith Kyo is back in action against Sam Lynch, and Lewis Byrne has been added, taking on Declan Fisher in a lightweight contest, obviously fighting out of Team Rhino. Also, Mike Grundy's son is on this card. He's not Irish, but a bit of a standout name there. So
shout out to Grundy's. Yeah, that's everything over there. Anthony Pettis FC, nice one for that. A couple of other quick announcements here. Mikey Pereira versus Henry Corrigan at Cage Conflict later on in a couple of months. That's a great fight. I'm looking forward to that. A couple of shows that were announced. Premier FC, or Premier MMA, I should say. The newly formed Premier MMA, Niall Sunderland, who has been on speaking with us. Premier FC has separated. Niall is running Premier MMA and putting on his first card on the 1st of December later on this year. Great to see that. Cage Legacy announced the card for Paddy's Weekend Plus, a kind of a contenders card that will be available for free on YouTube in December as well. And last but not least, we're 4 episodes into Octagon Challenge. And look, we have not shone a great light on Octagon Challenge. I want to say it's a fantastic show. I love it. Through the first 4 episodes, it's been brilliant. And we haven't shone a light on it because we're going to wait for the season to play out, and we're going to get the guys on to talk about that, and we will provide that with as much coverage as it does deserve, because I think that's been a fantastic kind of product that Octagon have put out, and credit to them for that. So that wraps us up for episode 42, another one done and dusted, and a good podcast in the books. Thank you to Andy Stevenson for joining me as always. Thanks to Caoilte de Barra for helping me out, and thanks to myself for being in attendance as well, I guess.
Fair pleasure, man.
Lovely. Like, subscribe, tell a friend. We appreciate the support. Caoilte, see us out.
Gurmí Mlambo, agus slán go fóill.